Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Usually you would hear Teeth Whitener and his wonderful, deep man voice greeting you to this podcast. But I'm Teeth Whitener now. Hello, this is my Teeth Whitener impression. Anyway, for some reason, the boys were like, you know what really would make this extra cursed? If we brought our partners on and had them also watch this god-awful movie and participate in this podcast. Oh, I don't know how this is gonna go, but it's gonna be fine. Shout out to Nighty Cube, Arun Osendono, hello. Prepare yourselves. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the call. They're all waiting. Their Discord profiles. Judging. Autumn says I'm leaving a lurk. I need to... No. Autumn, there are no spoilers. Well, actually, that's a lie. Teeth and Gil may... Oh, yeah, I can't control them. They're gonna complain a lot about the movie, but they'll probably compare it to the TV show. So if you haven't seen the TV show, I understand. Thank you for that lurk. Also, hello, Will. Hello. All right, let's go ahead and call these lovely people. Hello, I'm here.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey, girl, hey.
Hey, girl, hi.
I need to talk about the worst movie I might have ever seen in my life.
I did the intro, but I didn't do too much of it. I know this is y'all's thing, so if you wanna take it away, it's all good now.
It's Saul Goodman. It's bad. Okay.
Nothing is good.
Let me just start off by saying this. I have seldom seen a movie that made me more sad than Avatar: The Last Airbender.
You saw Shawshank Redemption.
I haven't seen all of it, so no. And when I say sad, I mean like bad sad.
Oh,
should we start off by saying that we all took this stupid, awful test?
Oh yes, we all took this test. If you guys would like to take it as well,
it's bad.
I can put it in chat.
It is the worst test I've ever taken.
It was made by like a 10-year-old, probably.
Yeah, where did you find it, Gil? What website was that? Beano?
It was on Beano.com.
Beano.
It was the first search thing.
It was the most absolutely terrible test I've ever taken in my
Hey,
life.
Goji. Yeah, Gil had us all take this to see what our elements were. It was like at Beano.com.
And it's worth noting, I took organic chemistry, so I know bad test.
I got water. Swampy, did you get fire?
I think so, yeah.
What did you get, Gil?
Okay.
Hello?
Your mic's jacked up.
Yeah, it is fucked up.
Teeth, you can't just be like, yo, your mic's
All that came
jacked up.
through was just barely swampy.
100% swampy swamp.
Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah, it's all swampy swamp.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello?
I think he got air.
He got air, and then
I did.
T-Pointer got
I
earth.
technically got water, but I just said, okay, everybody else got theirs. I took my class, so I guess I'm earth.
Oh, man.
It
Hey,
was
Colossal.
the most garbage quiz I've ever taken in my life. It had.
Oh, I've taken worse, honey. I've taken way worse.
I mean, I think that the quizzes that they do on ClickHole that are supposed to make fun of BuzzFeed quizzes are better than it.
Listen, it was very thoughtful, long, really well done.
What did you have for dinner last night? A bunch of things that, like a bunch of very, like they're all healthy foods, and I didn't eat any of them.
A salad, burnt meat.
Yeah, that was part of the
Yeah.
quiz, wasn't it?
They're
What'd
like
you have
apple.
for dinner?
Burnt meat, it's my favorite.
Oh,
Every night.
please,
Gotta get those
no.
carcinogens.
Oh, that's
Yummy.
Like the pictures were like having ugly like
Oh
stickers
god,
on
that's
them.
so gross.
The googly eyes.
No, I'm gonna share this. Hold on, I have to find it. There's so much chatter and memes. I'll find it. I can do this.
So, the thing about the movie, the thing we're going to talk about, we're basically going to compare The Last Airbender to Avatar. I'm going to start with the good, but I have a feeling that because of human nature, we're likely going to talk about the bad a lot more. So, I imagine we will spend a greater amount of time talking about how awful this movie is. But we're going to start out like this. So Avatar: The Last Airbender, in case you have been living under a rock for the last 15 years, it's a TV show that premiered on Nickelodeon in the year 2005, and it basically is about human beings who possess the ability to psychokinetically manipulate the four basic elements: earth, air, water, and fire. And using martial arts, these people are called benders. So fire benders, air benders, so on and so forth. And basically how the world interacts with these people. Not all people are benders. So I think that they deal with that a little bit more in like The Legend of Korra, which I have not seen. Like people's views of like bender supremacy and whatnot. But that's not something they really deal with a whole lot for The Last Airbender. So we're gonna pretend that none of that stuff exists. The world is really heavily based on Asian cultures, mostly China, although the animation style and a lot of the humor is strongly derived from anime. Like there's some people who consider Avatar to be an anime, even though it's not, because of how heavily it's influenced by Asian culture.
I feel like it's more like a Western homage to anime rather than
It is. It's
anime.
not. By definition, it is not
Yeah.
anime because it's not made by a Japanese studio. But it has so much in common with anime that a lot of people just lump it in with anime, even though it's not. So,
Our best anime.
and you will hear people say that, and you will not hear a lot of people correct people saying that.
Corey in the
because
house, best anime.
there's-
Corey in the house.
True.
Best
You will
anime.
hear no people correcting that.
Exactly. It is written in law.
But I will say it is a beautiful piece of animation. Like,
Oh, it's amazing.
I remember when it first came out, like being blown away. I feel like it opened the door for a lot of kids shows that dealt with very adult problems. Like now you have stuff like Steven Universe, you have Gravity Falls, Adventure Time. I feel like Avatar.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know. Star versus the Forces of Evil. Yeah. I feel like Avatar kind of opened the door for these kids shows.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, that really address some deep psychological
Mhm.
stuff. Like there's war trauma in this show, y'all.
Yeah.
There there's
So-
Still having
PTSD.
a fun, good time.
Yeah, so the show was so popular and so influential that they eventually made a movie based upon it. A live action movie, not an animated movie. That is an important distinction to be made. And that is where people take a lot of issue. The movie is generally regarded to be of very poor quality, but I had not seen it until yesterday. And so I was just assuming that all the people who watched it knew what they were talking about, and I just stayed away from it. Well, let me tell you, the reviewers were not wrong. It was one of the most painful viewing experiences of my entire life. I have seen some terrible stuff. I've watched Leprechaun Back to the Hood.
Do
I've
not
watched-
diss that movie. Every Halloween we watch it and he gives me this look. It is a
It's-
good movie.
It's bad. And
Don't
it's not
judge
so bad it's
Leprechaun
good.
It sounds
2
like a
Back
good
to
movie.
the Hood.
It is not so bad it's good. It is bad, and that's all there is.
I
to
will
it.
buy it and have Gil and Swampy watch it and have them make their own decisions.
I've seen.
Yes.
I've
Halloween
seen-
party.
I've seen some. I've watched clips from like direct-to-video nonsense we used to watch, direct-to-video Disney movies. This is like on another level, It's so bad that I don't think that words can really do it justice.
Yeah, it is
Um,
impressively bad.
It fails in almost every aspect. We will save that for the end of this. What's a really important disclaimer to make is that I rewatched the first season of the show and we watched the movie because the movie is based almost entirely, I think in fact pretty much entirely on the first season, except they mention a few things that happened later, like Sozin's comet, which is an important part of the TV show, but is not discussed until I think season 2 of the show. But they mention it in the movie. So we're not going to be comparing the whole show and how it wraps up everything to the movie because I don't think that's fair. I think it is very fair to compare the first season to the first movie.
Yeah.
So that's what we will be spending the most of our time doing.
Yeah.
So, does anyone have anything they want to add before I continue?
I felt like I had an aneurysm after watching it.
Oh, I felt like I was so confused. I was just so confused.
First, I was petrified.
Yes.
I mentioned how, like, after we watched it, it felt like no time at all had passed, yet, like, 12 hours had also passed.
Yes, it was so bizarre. Like, I know I sat and I watched a movie for an hour and a half, but, like, I felt like no time had gone by in my life, even though the sun was down. It was the closest I'll ever get to, like, the Twilight Zone in my life.
It was like shell shock.
It was. Yeah. And I want you guys to know, I talked a bit to Vineapple before this. We were just chatting, and I brought up what we were doing for the show tonight. And Outburst in the background told me a story of how he went to see this movie in theaters with a younger friend or cousin, I don't remember, who really loved Avatar, and he, like, cried. Like, I want you to know that just in passing, I mentioned this.
When this movie came out, I was a young kid who was extremely obsessed with the show. And, like, I remember being so excited to watch it, and I watched it, and I was like, oh, okay then.
Why does this feel like a "where were you" when moment?
Honestly.
This is our 9/11.
No, our 9/11 is 9/11. You tit. Don't say that.
I guess you're right, but
oh my god, this is Nickelodeon.
It is so bad. I just don't think I can express to you because, like, and it's not like some movies that are so bad they're good. There was like one or two unintentionally hilarious parts of the movie. This isn't like Battlefield Earth where, like, John Travolta hits his head on the ceiling and says, "Crap, lousy ceiling," or something, or stuff like that. Yes, we should all watch Battlefield Earth, by the way. It is there's so much stupid stuff. As an aside, like, they're like aliens take over the world and they let some humans out to do something like mine for gold. Some humans like go to a mall to find something on the behest of the aliens, and they eat a rat, and they find a rat, and they're starving. They haven't eaten anything in days, and they eat the rat. And then they're like, the aliens who are watching them on a monitor say, "It's their favorite food."
Oh, no, don't tell us this. Don't freaking. No.
So one of the aliens comes up to like one of the other characters, the human characters. I think it's John Travolta, and he holds up a rat, and he says, "Lunch."
For those of you that heard Teeth's mic cut out, he said, "Do you want lunch?" That's what he said.
Oh, it's so funny.
Anyway, that aside, God, are we just going to start watching bad movies and reviewing them? Is that what this is going to turn into? Because I'm scared.
Good bad movies. This is not one of them.
But something I do want to address about the whitewashing, we'll get to that, Scrubs, because there is something I noticed as
Hold
well.
on, my mic's.
Huh? Oh, are you fixing your mic?
I'm gonna disconnect and break.
Okay. But Scrubs, yes, I noticed something very specifically about what they chose to do, and we'll get to that. We'll get there.
So let's start by talking about the TV show. So,
the TV show.
Avatar: The Last Airbender is about basically. I mean, the opening narration explains it all pretty well. Basically, there's where the world was at peace, and the Avatar who could control all 4 elements, the only person in the world who could do so, had vanished. In his absence, the Fire Nation became aggressive and basically has launched a campaign to take over the entire world and destroy anybody who can bend the elements so that they can reign supreme, because they're benders, and benders have advantages in life over non-benders. They basically want to destroy anything out there that could oppose them. So they have gotten close to completing their quest, and they have basically decimated the Southern Water Tribe. And in their search for the Avatar, who was supposed to be reborn amongst the Airbenders, they destroyed all Airbenders and all temples and all the air temples. The Earth Kingdom is close to collapse, and the Northern Water Tribe is the only relatively politically untouched area of the entire world. So the Fire Nation is pretty much close to victory, and the Avatar has disappeared. So these 2 young children, Katara, who was a waterbender, and her non-bending brother, Sokka, find a boy
Don't you
in an
mean
iceberg.
Sokka?
We're not going to talk about that yet.
We're not going to talk about that yet.
Find a boy with an arrow tattoo on his head and arms in an iceberg, and he's apparently an airbender, and the Avatar, or I should say, and they ask him if he knew the Avatar, because he was supposed to be reborn amongst the airbenders. He goes through a cycle, blah blah blah. We'll talk about. We might talk about that.
Their goal is to stop that cycle.
Or eventually get it back to him being a firebender again, so they can control the Avatar, I guess. But the elements, or I should say, but Aang says he's not the Avatar, but he really is. And eventually it comes out that he is indeed the Avatar. In the meantime, the 16-year-old disgraced prince of the Fire Nation, Zuko, just happens to be sailing by, sees a beam of light shoot out of the sky, and is like, that must be the Avatar. And his uncle Iroh, who's his traveling companion, says, okay, give it up. That could be anything. It could just be the Northern Lights. And Zuko goes to find him, discovers that he probably is the Avatar because he's an airbender, and he basically attacks the Southern Water Tribe, says, give me this kid and we'll let you go. And Aang goes with them. He breaks free, and thus they go to the Northern Air Temple, Northern Water Tribe, so that Aang can learn water bending and eventually master all 4 elements, as he is currently only mastering. So I think that's like a good introduction to it. There's not really a whole lot else to say without getting into super spoilery stuff.
And you should know it by now, because it's a wonderful piece of art and it's free on Netflix and you need to see it. Sorry.
But it's
you should know.
But basically the central conflict of most of the first season is Aang is trying to get to the North Pole so he can learn waterbending, because there are no water Southern Water Tribe except for Katara, who is unrefined since she doesn't have a t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And when Aang makes it to, or I should say, and along the way, he's being pursued by first Prince Zuko, and his uncle Iroh, who are trying to capture him so that Zuko can be reintroduced to the Fire Nation society.
Yeah, and Uncle Iroh, man, he's hot. Yeah, he's.
Going on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just wanting to rant
It's
bad.
You gotta wait. We have not gotten through
You do
any
this.
of the stuff about.
Okay, go on.
Okay.
Hold it in, girl.
I'm trying.
Iroh basically is. Hold on, I'm trying to fix my sound.
He's a
Iroh is hot
delightful
in the movie.
older man.
Silver fox.
He's not a silver fox in the show.
In the movie.
He just looks like, the elderly uncle figure who's there to help the edgy child, navigate his life. We won't spoil anything, but Uncle Iroh is a very fatherly figure. Iroh. This movie's ruined me. It's ruined me.
Okay. So basically, the main characters of the first season, which was the only season we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Toph or any redemption arcs that may happen along the way. The first, Aang, Katara, Sokka, Aang's pet bison, Appa, and his pet flying lemur, Momo. Those are the heroes of the show. In the villains, the two main villains are Iroh and Zuko specifically. And there's a secondary villain that comes along, I think, in the second or third episode. I think the third episode, named Command now, who honestly, I don't really know. He's one of the less well-developed characters in the show. I don't know why he wants to capture the Avatar, except because he's arrogant and a prick.
Yeah, just power and pride hungry.
I guess he's not really. His motivation is not nearly as clear as the others. So he's not really as strong.
He catches him.
Yeah,
What?
he's.
I didn't hear you go.
Sorry, I said imagine how big his dick will be if he catches the Avatar.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
Okay. Well,
Why?
Whereas Azula in the second season, this is the only mention I'm gonna try to make. He basically replaces Zhao. And she's has a much clearer motivation, so she's a much stronger character as a result of it. Not that Zhao's a terrible character; he's just not as good. But he's a secondary antagonist who has the Fire Nation's resources behind him. And with those resources, he basically is able to command a huge force to try and capture the Avatar once he finds him. So. I don't really think so. I think that kind of gives you a good idea of what the show, or I should say, the basic premise. Avatar wants to go to the north to learn all four elements, to begin learning all four elements. He is prodigious, so he learns quickly, but he's undisciplined. So he is not quite as. So he learns quickly, but he does not master quickly. So he needs a lot of time up north. Meanwhile, the other two antagonist groups are trying to capture the Avatar for different reasons. Along the way, they don't interact with each other in every single episode, but along the way, they have conflict with each other, and they try to. And it comes about in a lot of different ways. The big thing is, though, the show is very episodic. There is an overarching narrative, but each episode deals with something a little bit different. There's an episode in the first season about a village of earthbenders who has been completely decimated, and all the earthbenders have been taken away to this metal island in the middle of the sea. And at least as of the first season, nobody knows that you can bend metal. So basically, metal, even though it is earthbenders can't do anything with it, so they're stuck. And then there's another season where they come across these vigilantes who are trying to covertly kill or destroy the Fire Nation, but their methods are less than. They are very Machiavellian. They want to destroy the Fire Nation at all costs, so they do some stuff that is pretty bad. So the show has a lot of different things that it deals with, and it's mature, but I think there's something that can be said that it's very also it's mature, but it's lighthearted the entire time.
Yeah, something that really makes Avatar so beautiful, I think, is it shows the duality of the very serious situations they find themselves in, but like the lightheartedness of a child. They act like kids, they play, they have fun. They
do.
And it's beautiful. It's a great representation of children in a show. They're not like
Perfect balance.
Yes, they're not aged up like freaking 30-year-old actors in a high school movie. They're which is a whole
They're mostly young actors in their teenage years.
Yeah, they captured the lightheartedness. It's very trying times and serious subjects. And in this movie
Not there yet.
I know we're not there yet.
But they act like kids, you know, they're children in a situation. So if someone acts immature, it's because, well, they are immature.
They're a kid.
They're 12, 14, and 15 at the start of the show.
God, I was a little brat. I mean,
exactly. So you're like,
Hey.
oh, well, why did Aang do this stupid thing? Why is he so selfish? Well, it's because he is selfish. He's
a kid.
not mature. He's a kid, and he's been thrust into a situation that he should not have to have been thrust into. And that's a really key theme to the. I think it might actually kind of be the central theme of the show. It's the whole concept of free will and choice. It's something that comes up a lot, and it comes up in a really big way in the series finale, which we're not going to talk about. But there's a really key episode in, I think it's season 1, episode 12, maybe 14, I don't know. Basically, there's a big storm coming, and honey, you got a big storm coming, and this old coot sees the Avatar, and he's like, "Where were you 100 years ago? You're the reason for all this crap." And Aang flies away, and his friends are like, "Well, why'd you say that?" And then Katara goes up and talks to Aang, and she learns that, like, he kind of unintentionally, albeit unintentionally, is responsible. He didn't he wasn't like hanging out and then just got dislocated from the the air nomads during his or I should say he willfully left because he knew that he would have his entire life would basically end. He couldn't have friends. Because he was being shipped off to another, they were trying to ship him off to another air temple where he wouldn't have any connections, so he would be forced to learn to be the Avatar. So at this point, the Fire Nation was becoming more aggressive, although they were not. They had not formally declared war on the whole world at this point. But they were getting more aggressive, and he was like, "I don't want this." So he didn't want to be the Avatar. It's something that's established very early on. It's not something he wants to do. And the whole idea of him being the chosen one is him having to deal with the consequences of something that he has no control over.
Mm-hmm. You say something, Bill?
Huh?
Were you saying something?
No, I was just reading.
Oh. So loud, breath.
It's just there's a lot of exhalation at the movie, and talking about the good things in the show just makes me very sad.
Yeah, I know it's hard.
Missing
So
on
I'm trying to willfully push the movie from my mind. for now. But
I mean,
the movie
covers.
what was that?
I was just gonna say, like, the show for me, and since we're only talking about book one, but like you're covering, uh, like the way that Aang grows throughout the show, and even in book one, is really interesting, and I like, because I mean, I know we're just kind of still talking generally, but like his character arc in the first book is very good, because like you said, he's thrust into something that he really didn't ask for and he doesn't deserve, but he's here now and he has to make the best of it, and he has to grieve, and he has to come to come to terms with his life. But that's all I was gonna add.
Yeah, he has there's a lot of baggage that comes along with it. I don't think we've actually mentioned this, but it's called Avatar: The Last Airbender because he's literally the last airbender in the whole world. The Fire Nation committed genocide against the air nomads in an attempt.
Had genocide in a kids show. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So they committed genocide against the air nomads because the Avatar was supposed to be born among them. Now, this is pretty short-sighted, and it kind of showed that the Fire Nation was not necessarily thinking very far ahead. He would just be reborn somewhere else.
Well, I think they were trying to cut off the cycle, so killing all the air nomads before the Avatar reincarnated in hopes that it would destroy the cycle of Avatar.
Yeah, they had figured that he was not born yet for some reason, but I guess that does make some sense. But the whole idea is that the genocide is something that happens in this show, and it's something that's kind of hinted at. The Fire Nation wants to do it again. They want to destroy the Water Nation and take away all their bending abilities. The Fire Nation is shown to be a very, very, very aggressive group of people, and it's not something that the show shies away from. Like the genocide is revealed to have happened in the 3rd episode of the show.
Yeah, they're very imperialistic, authoritarian, like their goal is to conquer everything.
Yes.
Just to assert themselves, basically.
Yeah. And it's something they tried to stick because early sketches of the Fire Nation was heavily influenced by Japanese culture, but they didn't want to say, oh, the Japanese are like imperialistic and they want to take over the world, so they kind of made them more cosmopolitan with a heavier influence from China. So that it didn't seem like
they did try to do that.
They did, but I mean, I think they're trying to not make it seem like Japan was a bad guy, just all around. They wanted to make it seem like more, okay, so they're kind of somewhat influenced by Japanese culture, but more so they're influenced by Chinese culture. So just like really the Earth Nation, although the style of their world is a little bit different. Of their culture is a little bit different. But the show, what were we gonna say?
Are we ready to rant?
We're not. We still have to talk about the movie, like about the TV show. Like, there's still stuff to talk about.
Finish it, because I need to.
So, some themes that run through the TV show are like, so there's free will, the nature of it. I think another kind of really important theme that runs through the show is the idea of being true to who you are. Some people might say that this theme is represented in pacifism, but I don't think it's really rooted in pacifism, because the show also shows people killing people or committing violence against other people, and it not being shown as being bad or evil if it was necessary. What the show really does try to hint at is that Aang is a pacifist, and he does not want to kill people, he's also a vegetarian, so he doesn't want to kill people or hurt anybody.
And Sorry, talking about the vegetarian thing really quick. I
Mhm.
love all the little details that the show adds. Like they repeat it. It's not just like, oh, he denies meat once and he's like, I'm a vegetarian. It's like a constant theme. They have those little tiny constant themes that really give the characters depth to them.
Right. I mean, and this is something that he inherits from being an air nomad. They're generally speaking pacifists, although not always, because it's hinted that his mentor Monk Gyatso, when he was being overrun by the Fire Nation soldiers, basically he killed all of them. So probably to protect other people, which ultimately ended up being a fruitless effort. The point is, Aang sticks to what he believes in, and the show doesn't make him seem stupid or dumb because of it. It actively makes his life harder trying to avoid killing people, but he's not shown to be wrong for doing it. But also, it doesn't seem like characters like Sokka, who, even though they're not shown to kill anybody in the show because it's almost certainly has killed
out
people
a lot,
during
honey.
Yeah.
Okay, what'd you miss?
Like the last sentence.
Yeah,
or
the last
like,
sentence, I
oh,
think.
What'd you hear last? I guess.
Just say your last sentence.
Sokka.
Okay, but yeah, Sokka is like not shown, or should say, probably killed people, but he's true to who he is. The show's has a lot of the theme. It's a little bit. This isn't quite as much of a mature theme because it's in a lot of Disney movies as well. But the show shows characters doing stuff and having to stick to and having to choose to be true to who they are and what they stand for, even sometimes when that's difficult to do. It would be easier for Aang to kill his enemies, but he chooses not to. It would be easier for Sokka to be a coward because he doesn't have any bending skills, but he's the first person in the entire Water Tribe who attacks the Fire Nation when they land on the island in their tribe. He doesn't have the ability to really fend them off, and Katara would probably be a better fit for attacking them, but he's the one who would first because he sees it as being his duty. So characters, even when they're in situations where they are at a disadvantage, stay true to who they are, and I think that's knowledge of oneself and your identity is kind of also an important theme that runs through the show.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Honestly, I was and I know we brought it up a little bit earlier, just talking generally about it being like a kid show, but like something that the show itself did really well and kind of stuck to that I like noticed today with Swampy watching it was humor. And like this is again, I'm broaching the movie topic, but man, was the humor bad in the movie. And like
non-existent, really.
No, it wasn't. And like that was like I don't want to say a tenet, but like it was a pillar of the show. Like
it goes to the idea that the show's much more lighthearted even when dealing with difficult topics.
It had a good balance between them.
Yes, and it's not the first example of anything doing this because, like, I mean, Star Wars also has a relatively lighthearted tone, even though it deals with, like, I mean, planets blowing up and like, I mean, in the movies for like in the prequels, like there is genocide that takes place. I mean, they're relatively, or I should say, but they still maintain a relatively a lighthearted tone. So Avatar is just another example of a show that's good about balance, but like performing a tough balancing act. It has a consistent tone throughout. It is you have no question in your mind the kind of show you're watching when you watch the TV show.
Are we ready?
Psyche is ready this whole time.
The one other thing I'm gonna say is there's two things. Well, the second thing is characters, and I think that once we've done we finish talking about the movie, we should compare the characters between it because, or as a wrap up to talking about the movie. But the movie is, or should say, but the first thing I want to discuss is like color. The color of the TV show is it maintains the right color tone. It's pretty easy to tell who is who based upon what outfits they're wearing. And for a kids show, that's really important. It's like in Star Wars. You know who the good guys are because of the outfits they're wearing. You know who the bad guys are because of the outfits they're wearing. It's really easy to tell the difference between them. And some shows opt to go with a more neutral tone, and that's fine. But when it comes to a TV show like Avatar, that is on the surface a kids show, it's really important that you be able to tell who is who and what is what. So like the airbenders all wear pretty much the same clothes, and people from the Earth Nation, or should say the Earth Kingdom, also more or less wear the same getup. Water Nation, they all wear blue. Fire Nation, they all wear red and black. But so it's easy to tell who's who by looking at them pretty much across the board. It also helps to set the tone for the show, which is the show is very light in color, so it gives the mood of the show a lighter hearted feel.
Yeah, it's very
so
bright.
color is really important
Yeah.
for setting the tone, and that's something that I feel the need to mention.
You're cutting out. I heard mention.
The last thing I will say is dealing with the pacing of the show. The show being episodic means that they can go through a lot of different phases really quickly and easily, and everything has a beginning, middle, and end, and it's pretty easy to follow. So it's not ever confusing, and it's a 24 episode first season, so it's fairly meaty for a kids show. Overall, it's about, I'd say, pretty close in length to a season of Game of Thrones in terms of actual viewing time. So there's a lot that goes on in the show, even though each episode is only 22 minutes, counting the beginning and ending credits. So, does anyone else have anything they want to contribute before I wrap the show discussion up? Man, I can't.
I think I'm good.
Okay.
I'm ready. Please.
So-
I'm ready.
What I'd like to say about the show is the show was very influential and important, and it showed that kids shows are not exclusively kids shows. Like TV shows, there have been adult-oriented cartoons before, and there have been cartoons that were made for kids that appealed to older adults, even though they weren't. Like, for instance, SpongeBob was a show for kids, but adults like it too. But Avatar is the first TV drama, one of the first TV dramas for kids that deals with adult topics, and but at the same time is still appropriate for all ages. So it's really good as both a kids show and a show that can be enjoyed by adults for a lot of different reasons. We didn't even talk about the martial arts at all, or bending. It's a fantasy setting, so there's a lot of world building that goes into it, and it's all pretty consistently good. So the show has a lot of stuff going for it that makes it appealing to people for a lot of different reasons. And then 2010, The Last Airbender came out.
Directed by M. Night Shyamalan Poopy Pants. I can't believe they
Man, the
gave
myth, the
him.
legend himself.
I can't believe they figured someone who did one really good thing and then kept redoing that one really good thing could do something as bright and as humorous and as complex as Avatar: The Last Airbender.
And isn't happy-go-lucky,
It
or
wasn't at all. And I feel like now
dark.
Yes, There is a movie of M. Night Shyamalan's that a lot of people hate, and I love it so much I own it. It's called Lady in the Water. Don't keep it to yourself, teeth whitener. But as someone who even enjoyed that movie of his, even I was like, why are they giving him this movie? I remember hearing about this being in the works and turning to my friends and being like, wait, why are they giving this to him? Who decided?
If there's one thing I've learned from watching his
hold
movies,
on, real
I've
quick,
seen
I
a
do
fair
want to
number-
say, Mind, thank you so much for subscribing. Okay, I'm done. Go.
If there's one thing I want to say about the choice to give the reins over to him, and this is going to something that you kind of already touched on, and I'm sure we will talk about at length during our discussion of this. But his movies are almost completely humorless. Like there's no humor. They're not
What are you
funny.
talking about? All the dead bodies from The Sixth Sense were hilarious.
And
I
like
love seeing creepy
Swampy,
ghosts.
not
When I-
everyone has your sense of
I
humor.
I think he either wrote or directed Devil, which was not a good movie. Some people thought it was a good movie. I did not. I did not. And
I did not hit him. I did not hit her. Whoops.
I did not kill him. I did not. Oh, hi, Grandma. So the Devil wasn't a good movie, but some people thought it was. But even if you liked it, there were points in the movie that I watched. I'm like, he didn't direct it. It's worth noting, but I'm pretty sure he wrote it. It was like so devoid. The humor was bad.
It was
It was
so bad.
so
Ill
bad.
timed. And it just didn't. It missed its mark every single time, which was 3 times I think that they tried to make a joke.
Yeah, you're right. Throughout the whole movie, they tried 3
Yeah.
times, and
And that's it.
in this movie there is an attempt, I will say, but they really fail because there is a character who's supposed to be the comedic relief. There is a character who is supposed to be that type of archetype, you know? And they make him Jasper from Twilight. It's the same actor. They make him freaking
Yeah.
Jasper from Twilight. They make him some pretty boy who
Always looks like he has to poop really bad.
does look like he has
It's
to
like this
poop.
incredibly. Now, I want to go on the record as saying this. I think it would have been really, really hard to adapt this successfully. It's the same issue that a lot of these new Disney live-action remakes run into. Okay, the charm of the movie is that it's animated. So when you decide to move it into live action, it loses a lot of that charm, just by default. It's like why I don't understand why Netflix feels the need to remake, say,
Death Note.
Death
Oh,
Note,
Don't even.
or the fact that they're remaking Cowboy Bebop. I don't get why they feel the need to
Cowboy
remake these
Bebop,
things.
I feel like could be. I will go on the record as saying this. I feel like Cowboy Bebop will do better than Death Note and Avatar because it's not supernatural. It is very nitty gritty for an anime. It's not very.
And
There's not a lot of fantasy elements to it.
I think it has a better chance of being successful because it's not as it's lighthearted, but it's not there's not much slapstick humor in it.
But something I do want to say is that not only between these actors, not only did they not really play into their roles very well, they didn't really have any chemistry between each other. Like the brother or sister, I don't know about y'all, but I don't act that way around my brothers. That was a weird scene for
They
me.
all acted like strangers the whole time.
Yes,
So
there was no
let's-
chemistry.
So let's back up. So I think it's worth noting that we should probably go through the plot relatively quickly because it's not anything like the plot of the show except for the very beginning and the very end of it. There's no
Yeah.
similarity. Basically, so the movie opens the same way. They have this opening narration with the elements and what all happened before the Fire Nation attacked, what led to it. and let me just say this. There is a ridiculous amount of exposition in this movie, but I'm sure we'll talk about that at length. The characters discover Aang in the iceberg, and then Zuko shows up out of nowhere. Dev Patel, who is usually a good actor, where's the Avatar? Where is he? Or something like that. He doesn't even give the person he's talking to a second to respond.
Kylo Ren.
Don't
Look at you, so old and frail.
Look,
I
we
know
don't
I
need to
turned 30 this year, but that's not nice.
We don't need to be talking about dissing Kylo Ren because
Kylo Ren's acting is perfect.
He's a great character. He's a great
Anyway,
character.
okay,
He's
guys,
the best
okay.
parts of the sequel.
Take a deep
Star
breath.
Wars!
Take a deep breath.
So,
I smell pastrami.
It's not pastrami, but you do smell food.
What did you get? What'd you make?
Do you have enough to
Mix.
share?
No.
I just made a quesadilla real quick. That's all.
How dare
Did you use my sauteed vegetables?
Maybe.
It smells like my sauteed vegetables.
okay.
So back to Avatar.
The show. So he shows up and he says, and then Aang for no reason decides to go on the ship with him. Then they go to the ship and Aang escapes somehow, even though he basically allows Zuko to catch him for no reason. They go to the southern air temple. Aang discovers that he is indeed the last airbender. And then they go on a bunch of stupid adventures, like Aang inspires earthbenders to not be oppressed, which I think was kind of riffing on an episode of the show.
There were a couple of episodes like that, sort of, but it was mostly Katara who's doing stuff like that.
Yeah, like the episode, I think I talked about this episode earlier, where there was a character, a town full of earthbenders that was basically rounded up and sent off to an island, a man-made island. Well, that's kind of what they were trying to do here, except the firebenders are stupid because they imprisoned a bunch of earthbenders where they could access the earth easily.
And they were just in a section of town, just off to the side.
And then 8 people work together to move a single rock and don't even throw it quickly. They just move it slowly.
Hovers over.
It would be faster to get 2 people to carry the rock.
Yeah.
Dude, the bending was so bad, and that's something that
Oh, God.
rewatching the show, it's so clean and smooth. Every move is invoking an element in some way, and the element flows with the move.
They take 10 minutes to get. They take 5 seconds. Seriously, 5 seconds to move something a quarter of an inch.
It's like a Dragon Ball Z power.
It would be easier just to carry around a bucket of water and throw it at your enemies. How? It's so tedious. It looks so tedious.
And it's not a problem. It's not a problem of animating something like that is just too hard. No, there's a couple of scenes, 2 in the movie where they animate things quickly.
In the war?
And it's oh, that makes sense. Or they animate things quickly, but everyone else is moving in slow motion. It's
yeah, it looks cool.
Well, that would have been, and they animated it faster in slow motion than they did in 80% of the movie at normal speed. And I'm what? Why? Just what?
It's so baffling. And they just and okay, so there's that scene, and then I don't remember what else happened. There's a bunch of dumb stuff with the Fire Nation. By the way, Zuko interacts with Team Avatar 3 times, and only 2 of those were antagonistic. And then they go to some other air temple, and for no reason whatsoever, some douchebag who had come up to the Earth Temple somehow knows the Avatar is coming for no reason whatsoever, and is just sitting there waiting for him to show up. And he's like, "Oh, come to this temple, this room in the temple that is also in the temple that you live in, and somehow you didn't know existed." And he goes in there, and then, oh no, the Fire Nation's here. He brought the Fire Nation
Apparently a whole army
down for potentially a month.
Yeah.
No, what kills me about that scene is so in this temple, right? He goes in there and he thinks that this earthbender is his friend, and he leads him to a cool area where there's all these statues of all the previous avatars. I'm like, wow, this is really pretty. Good job, Avatar. Wow, this is a scene I like. And then
Oh yeah, by
no,
the way,
no,
Nephi,
don't take this from me. No,
ahead.
listen. And then the dude is like, I'm sorry, Avatar, but you've ruined my life. This like 80-year-old man. And then a fire soldier steps out from behind every single statue. There are like 100 statues, and all these stupid little men are perfectly poised between every single one. And they've been quiet for half an hour. They must have been in there for at least half an hour.
Yeah, it was bad.
And then they all
By
just
the
step
way-
out with their bows poised perfectly, and it's so
Yeah.
nothing happens there. Like he goes there to like have for no reason. He goes to the Earth Temple, like, oh, I'm just trying to like go back into the Avatar state so I can talk to some dragon, I guess. And so he goes to this room. He doesn't actually talk to the dragon spirit there, and then he gets kidnapped, which is supposed to be like remind you of a scene in the show where
Zhao kidnaps him again, yeah.
yeah, in the Blue Spirit episode, where Zuko is revealed to have something of a conscience, and he doesn't want Zhao to just kidnap and starve a young boy until he inevitably dies of old age.
Mhm.
sounds so much worse
Yeah.
when you put it that way.
But
So were you saying something about the earlier scene though?
Me?
Yeah.
So no, that scene for me, I think that whole scene, one, it was like this weird Game of Thrones about where all the soldiers came out. But two, that whole scene I feel like was fan service so we could get the Blue Spirit. So we could see Zuko like that. That was it. That whole scene in my head, it served no other purpose.
No,
that
it
whole
didn't.
sequence, but that's the
thing
only
is-
thing I could try to rationalize.
They
I
could have.
think- Go ahead.
I was just gonna say they could have just done it the way they did it in the show, or at least made more of an homage to the show. Because the room that they went in the show is like a sacred room that Aang is fully aware of, and no one should have access to it except for airbenders. And unless they like destroyed a wall or something, but
Which they didn't, I'm sure.
no, it looked fine. Weird. Why? Yeah.
I think it was also like trying to like it's trying to do like two things at once. So it was trying to bring in the Blue Spirit thing, and it was also trying to remind you of an episode like right before they get to the North Pole where they go to the Northern Air Temple and they find out that like the secret area that they go into during this stupid sequence is actually, or should say, is like where they're storing a bunch of Fire Nation weapons that they're keeping there so that the people who live in this air temple, who aren't airbenders by the way, so they can like survive. So I think it's kind of trying to do both things, but
Like
it's
barely and in the worst way.
yes. And it also it just strains the credibility of it because these guys were just hanging out there for like they could have been there for a year.
Yeah,
And there's absolutely no way of knowing how long they were sitting there. They were just sitting there for a little bit. Okay, well, how did this guy know that the Avatar was coming?
Yeah. Was there
If
like
he
a
did-
scout or something that saw them? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you mention that?
Yeah.
Since we're
Why wouldn't you mention that? Why wouldn't you set it up?
since
There's
we're-
no setup, no payoff. It's just it's a shocking moment, I guess.
Okay, since we're talking about the Fire Nation, I really want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is how they cast people.
I think we need to first wrap up our discussion on the plot. So that happens. The Blue Spirit comes, who's actually Zuko, and somehow Zhao knows that it's Zuko, even though all he can see is literally his lips. And
They're pretty juicy though.
In the series, he finds his swords and realizes it, and it makes sense, and I can see easily how he connects those dots. In the movie, he's just like, yeah, I bet that fucker's Zuko. I know it. I know it in my
I like
mind.
him
I
for some
recognize
reason.
those lips anywhere.
I'm not projecting.
Like Zhao in the show is like a coward, and he hates Zuko because Zuko dares to say things that other people aren't willing to say, and Zhao just wants to consume and consume and consume. So he hates Zuko for a reason. But in the movie, it's like, oh, I hate Zuko because his dad told me to, I guess. And
Yeah.
Becky said you were mean, so I don't like you anymore, Amanda. I'm sorry.
And there's absolutely no way he could have known it was Zuko. Because when I say it's literally only his lips that are exposed, it is literally only his lips that are exposed.
And in the series, he has nothing exposed. So, like,
So he doesn't know.
Yeah, he
he
has
could be
nothing.
anybody. Like you already hinted at it. The reason he finds out is because he has the swords and he recognizes the swords.
they're never shown again in the movie.
No, and
Oh.
so okay, that's basically the whole first half of the movie. Them escaping from that, and now they're in the North Pole. And basically, the last 3 episodes of the show of the first season are half of the movie. They compiled the entire first season of the show into like half the running time of the movie. Seriously. Okay,
Can I-
so
Can
so they managed to actually do a fairly okay, at least in terms of the plot, they do a fairly faithful job of like adapting the rest of it.
Hold.
And so basically, they go to the water nation or the Northern Water Tribe to learn water bending, and then the Fire Nation comes, lays siege to them, tries to kill the Moon Spirit, and then Princess Yue sacrifices her life to basically become the Moon Spirit and give waterbenders their ability to bend water back. And meanwhile, Zuko kidnaps Aang, and while Aang is in the spirit world. And then Team Avatar finds him. He leaves wherever Zuko has him. And then Aang destroys the Fire Nation fleet.
Also, can I just say, they never touch on the waterbending master at all.
No. He's
Paku's
named Paku, but he's never, ever
Mentioned or
addressed.
talked to. Not one.
They do not. He says like a single sentence.
Yeah, you know their full reason technically for going to the North Pole, which I don't think they really brush up much on in the movie.
No, they don't.
Not even.
It's something that's hinted at a lot of times
I'm sure
leading up to
Katara
it.
talked about it in one of her monologues.
Yeah, probably.
Oh my god.
Well, and we will talk about the exposition in this movie a lot, but yeah, it's never really he's never addressed. In fact, I almost thought they combined Paku and the chief of the Water Tribe into one character for a while. I was actively confused at who was training Aang and Katara. In fact, a big sticking point of the show is that they do not train girls to be waterbenders in the North Pole, except for
That's
Hela.
like a huge thing.
Yeah,
And it's never addressed.
also,
Even though they had
Paku
literally an hour and a half to do so in the movie.
and Paku was like engaged to her, to Katara's grandma and stuff. But don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Teeth,
So,
let me
okay,
know when I can. Let me know.
And then there's a stinger at the end that was really wishful thinking. It's like, so let's talk about the possibility of there being a sequel. Then Sozin's Comet and Azula is revealed to be in the movie, even though she actually has no speaking lines in the entire first season. She has a speaking line in this for some reason. So
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the plot of the movie. If you thought that it was easy to follow, trust me, watching it is not. It's very confusing.
It's not only the plot, it's the cinematography too. Like, there's a couple scenes where I'm like, oh, that was good, and then the rest I'm like, wait, what? Where are we?
It's
What's going
really
on?
hard to tell what's going on sometimes.
There's one where isn't Iroh or like, isn't Katara talking to Aang and then suddenly she's talking to Sokka?
Yeah, like what
wait,
on
what?
earth just happened? Like the editing is confusing too because
Sokka was
they
like
didn't show.
so far away.
God, and the
They didn't
super
show Aang
close-ups
walk
of
up
the
to Sokka.
faces, like the
Oh my
super
gosh.
awkward. Like
Oh
I don't
my
want to
God.
see Aang's
So-
nose hairs. I don't
Where
want.
it's like a
Like,
conversation and the top of
It's
the head
ultra close-ups.
and are
It's
cut
not.
off.
It's not like Wes Anderson style where they're
Oh.
talking to the camera pretty much. It's
Or-
just bad.
And it's
Swampy,
not
you-
for like, it's not for dramatic effect or anything. Yeah, it's
No.
just like
It's
they're
just that
having a
they-
normal conversation way
And
too
There's
close to each
something
other.
Swampy said while we
so-
were watching the movie that made me laugh so hard. There was like a zoom in on Aang, and Swampy was like, I don't want to feel like I'm making out with a kid.
with the
Yeah, it was
yeah.
so, like it was so close. It was like I was next to a lover, and I'm like,
Snot-nosed
get away!
child.
oh, like this, I don't want to get this close to this child. God, it was so uncomfortable.
I laughed so hard it almost made the movie enjoyable.
Yeah.
Almost
so
for a little tiny
before
bit.
we talk about the elephant in the room,
Oh,
there's like a
honey.
few stinkers, that really need to be addressed. Not before we address the things that like
Elephant in
really,
the room, all the floodgates
really
get
bothered me, and all of us. First of all, something Catnip mentioned, or Pie, just gonna call her Pie. Pie mentioned is the editing. Yeah, this is an hour and a half movie, and it covers like the length of a Game of Thrones season in terms of actual viewing time.
Yeah.
There's so much whiplash because they go from one scene to another with no explanation between it. It's
Zero
so
character
jarring.
Zero
just don't-
growth.
No, it's so confusing watching the movie because it just like they go through everything so quickly, and even like the first episode of the show, they established why Aang was being kidnapped. It wasn't, or why they let him be taken by the Fire Nation. It's because Aang basically led the Fire Nation to them, but
And they
that
were
is not
mad.
established at any point in the movie.
No.
At
And
any
then, like,
point, because they just cut through so much stuff.
weird inconsistencies constantly. Like at the beginning in the movie, the grandmother has to explain what the avatar is, and I understand it's because like to explain for the audience, but they
But they
explain
all
it
know.
to Katara and Sokka, like this is this thing, and then later in the movie they're like, oh yeah, we've known about this forever. It's like,
Yeah, so
What?
why'd you tell them? And
I know.
that little bit took easily 2 or 3 minutes.
And you know what kills me?
And then they just cut to something that like takes 2 seconds that should have taken 2 or 3 minutes.
Well, here's what kills me. I instantly thought of a better way to do that. Pull the Moana with the little kids and then telling the story of your people.
Yeah,
You
so
don't have to
There are
freaking...
plenty
it's,
of little kids in the Southern Water Tribe canonically in the series.
we're gonna talk about exposition at length because I think it's one of the key failings of this movie.
Oh god, it's bad.
But like a really good way to actually, I'm just gonna save that for the exposition talk. The cinematography you've already talked about, but it really bears repeating how bad it is. The extreme close-ups. Why do you do an extreme close-up in a movie? It is to show the facial acting of a solid or great actor. There are no great actors in this movie except for Dev Patel. So there's no reason to do extreme close-ups of anyone at all.
I mean, this was the Aang's actor's first acting gig ever.
Ever.
He wasn't an actor previously.
No,
thought
and I don't
he
wanna
did
crap
an
on the
okay
kids.
job.
Oh, I don't think that anybody did an abominable job except here's the key.
M. Night Shyamalan.
A bad director
He's old enough to
leads
know better.
Bad acting. So
Yeah.
we'll talk about the acting at length, I'm sure, but you do extreme close-ups to show a range of emotions that is difficult to capture from a wide shot. There wasn't a good reason to do half of these close-ups, and the cuts between different angles is just basic, really boring camera A, camera B, shot, reverse shot stuff. They didn't like mix things up. Like something interesting they do in like Psycho, where they're doing a shot reverse shot thing where Marion Crane is talking to Norman Bates. Like they just do kind of boring camera angles, and then all of a sudden Marion touches on something touchy, and they do this weird, almost Dutch angle where they're looking at him from below at an angle, and it's like, whoa, what just happened? It's supposed to throw camera angles and cinematography are supposed to make you feel things that you can't express through written word. The problem is this movie just does the bare minimum, and sometimes it doesn't even do that. So it's just so bad. The cinematography wasn't good either. It was boring at best, and it was terrible at worst. It was jarring.
So can we let out the siren? Can we let Psyche loose?
Yes. So
Don't even introduce it. Just let me.
okay, just I'm gonna let you go.
Alright, so buckle up. Okay. One of the most amazing things about the Avatar show is I had never seen such a beautifully racially diverse cast, especially in a kids show. All right. Growing up in Atlanta as a mixed kid and having friends that were from all sorts of different cultures, it was really cool to see that reflected in a show. It was beautiful. And this movie, they didn't even try to hide it, y'all. You start off, now, Katara and Sokka are supposed to be like of the Inuit culture. They very, very clearly are like this in the show. Very, very clearly. But in the movie, them and their grandmother, these three people are the only white people. They didn't even make the whole tribe white.
They didn't even try to blend it in.
They didn't even try to hide it.
It was like a 10-year-old doing eyeshadow for the first time.
It was so bad.
No attempt.
It was so frustrating. And it was so very obvious that the people with the most screen time, except for one, and I'll get there, were white. But the villains, they weren't the race they... Oh, honey, oh, you got a storm coming. The villains in the show didn't look like how they were in the kids show. In the kids show, they're supposed to represent like Imperial China or Imperial Japan. In the show, they were brown, Middle Eastern, freaking the villains. And I'm half Middle Eastern. So I wonder if I just pick up on it more in movies. I just kind of zero in on who they make the villain of the show.
But you see it in other movies that have this bad habit, and you see it here.
It was the only time they had a lead character be something that wasn't white, and it was the villain. And it made me so frustrated to witness. And like, I don't know. You have a wonderful show that you can just pick from. Like, there are these amazing actors that are other ethnicities that you can pull from. There are so many great people out there.
Yeah.
But you don't. Daddy Hunkrat.
Yeah.
Aw, honey, thank you for having Daddy Hunkrat during my rant. Thank you. It calmed me down a little. But yeah, it just frustrated me so much when I realized the amount of screen time divvied up amongst them all were... Because Aang also, like, why?
It's worth noting that a lot of the characters in the TV show, their voice actors are white. But the difference is you couldn't tell that most of them are white because it's a cartoon, and they're represented in the show as being, they don't sound white. They just sound like the characters they just sound like the characters. There are actually a couple of characters in the show that are of Asian descent. A couple of main characters. Iroh, at least for the first season and a half, is voiced by a Japanese man, and Dante Basco or Bosco, I don't know how you say it, Filipino. Is Filipino. So
yes, man.
Yeah, so there's a lot of characters in the show that are voiced by people who are not, or who there are some characters that are voiced by non-white actors and actresses. But there's also big guys who do a lot of voice acting work, like Bradley Baker and Mark Hamill, of course, is the main villain. So there's nothing inherently wrong with that because the characters appear as though they're ethnically diverse on screen, but in the movie, they don't. You wouldn't be able to tell.
And what killed me also is when they go to the northern tribe, they completely forget it. It's like frozen up in there. Everyone is Norwegian. Everyone is very fair. There wasn't a single Inuit person. The only person who looked racially ambiguous was the princess, and that's because she looks like Ariana Grande. But it was so frustrating to see when you already have a show with an amazing script. You already have a show with amazing racial diversity, and you just choose to not even pull from it. Like with Game of Thrones, I'm not trying to trigger anything here. I know how Gil and Teeth feel. I know, no. Let me say, with Game of Thrones, at least they didn't really have any more source material to go on. At least they ran out of books towards the end. Avatar was finished. Avatar was complete. It was handed as a gift. Just stick to the guidelines. You'll be okay. And they pooped on the IKEA manual and they tried to fix the furniture up anyway, and it didn't work.
And then they broke it. People started sitting on it and it all collapsed and it was awful and bad.
Splinters everywhere, crying.
Emotionally, physically.
Oh, God.
So, may I read a quote for you guys? Just a couple quotes here.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. I want to read you some M. Night Shyamalan stuff. Paramount provided a statement about the casting choices. So this is Paramount first, and then M. Night Shyamalan. The movie has 23 credited speaking roles, more than half of which feature Asian and Pan-Asian actors of Korean, Japanese, and Indian descent. The filmmaker's interpretation reflects the myriad qualities that have made this series a global phenomenon. We believe fans of the original and new audiences alike will respond positively once they see it. Shyamalan then commented on the issues regarding fans' perceptions of the casting in an interview with the Washington Post, saying anime is based on ambiguous facial features. It's meant to be interpretive. It's meant to be inclusive of all races, and you can see yourself in all the characters. This is a multicultural movie, and I'm going to make it even more multicultural in my approach to its casting. There's African Americans in the movie, so it's a source of pride to me. The irony that protesters would label this with anything but the greatest pride, that the movie poster has Noah and Dev on it, and my name on it, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, it has 23 speaking roles, which are most Asian and Pan-Asian, but none of them are main characters. Speaking roles could be a role with 3 sentences. Like, and again, what Psyche said, the characters that are not Caucasian in this are antagonists. So I believe Dev is Indian. I believe the guy who played the Fire Lord is also Indian. General Zhao, Indian, and then Iro is Persian.
I
So
knew
it-
it!
it's-
Sorry, I'm turning into my aunt. Every time she sees an actor online, she's like, oh, Roxanne, he's Persian. Oh, sorry, I'm turning into her. It's okay.
But it's
He's not in the series. He's not hot in the series.
Just speak for yourself.
Hey, Persian men, though, girl.
Girl.
So, but my point is like, and well, M. Night Shyamalan, I believe, is Indian as well. But my point is like,
It is, yeah.
they gave them minor roles. Like they gave POC people minor roles or non-existent roles or antagonist roles. None of them were main characters. None of them have any relevance to the like major relevance. And it was like that on top of all the inconsistencies with it, like an Inuit tribe having one white family, then the other water tribe being apparently made up of Scandinavians.
With one
The-
non-white child.
Then a bunch of like random people, like a bunch of non-insignificant roles, and like there are no significant Earthbenders in the movie, which is fine. There really aren't any significant Airbenders and Earthbenders in the first season of the show. But they're all played by like they're played by Asian people, but there's like one that has a speaking role, and they're actually shown to be kind of pathetic because Earthbending is like the least useful out of all of them in the movie because
But
it
in the
takes
show-
8 Earthbenders to move a rock.
Yeah.
Earthbenders are shown as the strongest, most freaking. Because Earth is everywhere. Oh god, I'm sorry.
Yeah, like the Earthbenders. They have their I don't think that there's any one that's like obviously better than the other, but Earthbenders, they have the advantage of their element being absolutely everywhere
By the way,
except for water.
And in the movie, firebenders needed fire around, and the big deal was that Iroh could create fire. And I'm like, the reason firebenders are so powerful is because they can just create fire.
Yes, fire is a deadly thing, and as long as they have air to breathe, they can create fire. It's pretty simple. But like, oh, he can create fire from nothing, and that's what Sozin's comment is. Firebenders can create fire from nothing. Which, ironically, as an aside, because we really aren't talking about this yet, because, like, okay, so like that's the big deal. But I guess that actually is a pretty big deal because all the other benders can basically do nothing with their abilities. So, I mean, the ability to create an element from nothing is relatively impressive considering how useless earth and water bending are, considering how much effort goes into moving stuff.
And I have to mention, since we're on the subject of earthbenders, apparently, this was mentioned in chat, there was a huge scene with the warrior women. Like, there were multiple scenes and they cut them out because they thought it would make the movie too long. Yeah. There were multiple huge scenes with them.
Also,
they were so cool. Yeah.
Remember that one Fire Nation guard who looked like he worked at Best Buy?
His name is Carl.
He was like the only like white dude, and he was just like,
I just work here.
Shout out to that guy.
And it's more just, it's just so. I think what really is, it's disappointing because you wouldn't know that this is a series that was heavily based on Asian cultures and Inuit cultures if it wasn't for the fact that you watched the series before.
Yeah. It will, and it's because, like, okay, so the actual breakdown of it is the Fire Nation is more non-distinct. It's East, South, and Southeast Asia. So elements of Imperial Japan, Imperial China, etc. But like the Earth Kingdom is like largely based on like
mainland China.
Yeah, mainland China, and it's like economic boom. The water tribes are based on the Inuits, and then the air tribes are based on Tibetan monks.
Yeah, the monks.
Yeah, it's clear as day in the animated show, but like in here, it's so off the wall. There are random white people, there are random POC people just thrown in. Like they don't feel like separate cultures. It feels like they just grabbed people from like these seem like different states in the U.S. They're all a part of the same country, but they wear different armor. Like that's it.
And the more I think about it, because usually most production happens out of California, right? Like a lot of casting. California is one of the most amazing places for racial diversity. It has one of the biggest Asian American populations. You cannot tell me there is not a talented actor or actress in the state of California that you cannot get to fit these roles. You cannot convince me.
And okay, and this I think is a good transition point to the next thing that I'd like to spend a fair amount of talking about. Like, okay, I could forgive this, I think it would still be like a sting, it would sting a little bit. It would kind of suck. Oh, well, why isn't there more Asian representation in this movie? If the acting was worth it. But the acting in this movie is so bad. so unbelievable from almost every single character that makes an appearance on screen. Like, why did you insist on there being a bunch of white people playing these characters? Because they're not good actors, they're bad actors.
As far as the actor looks like she's doped out on meth the whole time. She's just like,
I think you mean
Rolling.
Sasha's actor.
No, she
No,
looks
Katara.
like she's been crying to her mom every night about how she's getting bullied and no one's listening.
like she just has a sad blank face and her mouth is always slightly open and she just like blankly stares everywhere. And Sokka's actor always looks like he's in the middle of trying to hold in a poop, but there's no bathroom, and so he has to just like
Just looks so angry all the time. And
You ever think a
this-
guy is cute and then you see his face and he always looks constipated and you're like, oh,
you're always like that.
better not.
this goes to like something that I think we already kind of touched on, but like it's just like it's very difficult to represent
You cut out.
emotions of a character, of an animated character on a human face that has limited amounts of
But you know
movement.
what kills me? We
it's
have
just not worth the amount of effort that goes into it.
Yeah. We have freaking, like, okay, I don't know why it couldn't have been an animated movie. Because there are freaking, like, 4 Naruto movies. Don't tell me you can't make an animated movie.
There's more than 4.
And they all have
okay.
nothing to do with the main plot. They're
All right,
separate
weebs.
missions.
Okay. I'm just
That's the
saying.
thing, like it's a successful anime.
There's
and-
at least 4, okay.
Oh yeah, I think I
Why
have almost
can't-
every single one. There's a lot. I
Why
can't
can't
count
there
them
just
all
be
really
one
quick.
animated? Like, I would even be okay with 3D animation, like Coco or something. Like, fine. Why did they choose live action?
And
I don't
would
know.
have been done well. It just wasn't. I think there are good live action movies out there. Like by the way, there's other Death Note live action movies and they're fine. I like them. These ones are bad. The new one is bad and this is bad.
Yeah, it's just I don't understand why some people feel a need to like the act. So let's go back to what I was trying. The acting is so wooden. Like, for instance, and I want to make sure that the blame is placed where it belongs. I don't want people to like talk about how cruddy all of the actors are because I haven't seen them in anything else. There's no way of knowing how good of an actor Noah Ringer is based on this because it's his first performance ever. But a good director will get the most out of his actors. It's one of the reasons why there's so much why Mark Hamill in the first Star Wars movie comes across as a whiny, bratty teenager, and the second one he seems more well developed. It's because George Lucas is horrible at directing people. He doesn't know how to communicate to people and tell them this is what you should be experiencing in a clear and expressible way. With all these great talented actors that come in the first Star Wars trilogy, I mean in the prequels trilogy, they're all like they have so little acting going on throughout them. So a good director will bring out the best in his actors. M. Night Shyamalan gets nothing out of his actors, even though a few of them are really, really talented. I mean, I don't think Nicola Peltz is a particularly great actress because she's the only other movie I know that she's in is what is like a Transformers movie, and it's apparently terrible. And I haven't bothered seeing it.
Move out.
Like Dev Patel, he starred in like Slumdog Millionaire, which is an Academy Award-winning movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in some good stuff. He's a solid actor with a successful career. But like Noah Ringer, he's like this kid who looks sad and confused all the time. All the time. The entire movie, he looks confused. And I think he might have actually been confused because I don't think M. Night Shyamalan was telling him what he needed to be doing.
Don't
It's
bring up
water on
Ghost
the
in the
center.
Shell. Don't.
Oh,
I saw
yeah,
what
we're
you
talking
typed
about
in chat.
whitewashing?
Don't Mitch and Ghost in the Shell.
Did you really like the anime, Psyche?
I loved it was one of the
I
first
haven't
animes
seen
I'd
it.
ever
Oh, I
seen.
need
I won't spoil anything. I have the original. Back in my day, you had to go to like Best Buy or something to get an anime movie.
You mean Blockbuster?
No.
Don't you talk
not
about
even-
Blockbuster. I loved Blockbuster
I
as a
loved
kid, okay?
Blockbuster too.
In fact, speaking of Avatar, my grandpa, when Blockbuster was kind of like near the end there, we would go to Blockbuster, and I really wanted to rent Avatar to watch the whole series, and he just bought me the first season in individual DVD boxes. So for the longest time, I had the whole series of Avatar, because he did it for the other 2 seasons. I had the whole series of Avatar in individual DVD cases for each CD.
That's how you
from
had to do
Blockbuster.
it. That's how you had to.
But
Yeah.
it's like the acting is so. He sounds confused the whole time. His delivery is bad. It's like I think at one point he might have actually he might have said, "Awesome people." Like, what is that? Like, who wrote this script? Like, seriously, the dialogue doesn't make it. It's just like it's like two aliens speaking in an alien tongue being Google translated into English. It's so like they don't talk like human beings. And that's something that I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit. Nobody acts like a person in this movie. Like they don't act like human beings at any point.
No, they don't.
It's
They act
so
like robots, like actual robots that we're trying to teach.
Yes.
our-
That's out of love.
so they act like robots who have to explain in detail what they're doing and why they're doing it. Because they can't communicate it through their acting.
Yeah, it's
Ugh.
so bad.
It was the acting in this movie is so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Something else that really sucked about the movie was like
The soundtrack was awful too. Just
yeah, the martial arts. Can we talk about that a little bit? Bending.
Yeah, the fact that the bending part was fine because there's technically bending moves with it. They could have done way better, but also like normal people were just fighting with martial arts, and like that they didn't do that in the show. They just actually fought each other with like spears and swords
Yes.
because they're not bending.
Why would you use your fist when you have weapons?
And like I know we've mentioned it before, but that one scene with like 8 earthbenders working
Can
to
you pull up that
slowly.
GIF?
no,
Yeah,
I put it in chat. I put it in chat earlier.
Chat? Okay.
Can we put it
can
again?
you put it
Because I didn't
again?
see it.
Everyone click this link for the love of God, because it's like
Please.
8 people to
Or
push
you
a
could
boulder
pick it.
the size of a basketball.
And then also, bending moves don't take that long. It would have just been
You
them
could've just
stomping
shot
and moving their
someone in that
arms up
time.
or
You
something.
could've just
But no,
shot-
they're doing so
Yes,
much.
they move.
extra
They
work.
move like it's like a workout to move a small rock like 10 feet. Like they're doing a dance routine almost, and a rock just happens to be floating by while they're doing it.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't have to do with them at all. They're just trying to distract everyone. Oh, it's
And
so
everything moves so slowly. Like it's just like okay, you guys have like swords and spears, and the Fire Nation cannot conquer people using fire if they don't have fire around them constantly. By the way, fire is represented as not like they don't draw on fire as a source. They take fire from one place and move it somewhere else. So there's like a finite amount of fire in a torch.
I
So
have
they
to
can only
confess
like
something.
they can only like shoot their fire gun 3 times before they're out of
Yeah.
ammo.
Okay, I have to confess something. I'm not gonna go too far in depth because it's past this season, but I am so glad this only got 1 movie because some of my favorite characters, like Azula and her girls, freaking Ty Lee. I'm so glad they didn't get to butcher him.
Cosplay Ty Lee.
You would be Ty Lee.
I Yeah, she was my Halloween costume one year.
Does
What
that
about
mean I'm a
Toph?
Zola?
They
Anyway,
would've-
I'm just
they would've
really
put her
glad
on.
that they
like
didn't get a
Lucy.
chance to ruin it. I'm just
Yeah.
so glad.
Yeah.
Toph is such a powerful earthbender because she can create an earth from nothing.
Wasn't
That would have been the
Toph
big
in the
reveal.
movie? Wasn't
No,
she
she
the one
wasn't.
running? Oh, I thought that
No.
was supposed to be Toph.
No.
She can create
No.
earth from nothing. She's so powerful.
I can only imagine who they would have casted for Toph and how that would have gone. Oh, we forgot the best part, actually.
No, what's the best part?
No, that they were gonna originally cast Zuko as Jesse McCartney.
Oh,
That's right!
Yeah.
That's
Uh-huh.
right!
Uh-huh.
Oh
Jesse
my
a
God.
guy with
We
like
could've
no
had an
significant
Avatar-
acting credits.
We could have had an Avatar music video, y'all. We could have had Jesse
Oh,
McCartney.
great.
You know what? They might have been gunning for that. That might have been
With,
why they were trying to get him.
Oh
It's
my
single,
you know, like-
God.
The reason why they got Beyonce for the Lion King movie, even though she's a terrible actress, is because they could have a song for her to sing.
Freaking, we could have got hit singles like Whitewashed Enough Yet?
Why my dad hates
Or
me.
like,
Oh.
or Bend Closer to Me, Baby, or something like that.
Bend it for me, baby. Aha, aha.
No!
Fire, Bend with Me.
Oh God, no, I'm so mad.
Oh, it's just there are so many things that they didn't get a chance to ruin, and I'm actually glad for that. But they would have like cast a deaf person to play Toph, instead of a blind person.
One thing that made me laugh a lot is that right when we started watching the movie and it brought up with book 1, and Teeth was just like, well, that was ambitious of you.
Yeah, like they were really hoping that
Better
this would
for
be.
it.
They were not
man.
they were not shy about the potential for this being a sequel.
Well, they just thought they couldn't fail, which is, I hate it when directors think to
And-
themselves that they cannot fail. Oh, I'm too big to fail. And they get lazy.
Oh, he was very lazy.
Part of
There
it, they
was- so
didn't try.
Yeah, exactly, Swampy. They're just
And going along with like the martial arts. Okay, so there was this one. There were like several nothing scenes in this movie, but there were none that were as baffling to me as this scene where Katara and Aang are doing this stupid water bending dance, and they have no master anywhere near them teaching them anything. They're just doing martial arts for no reason. There's not any reason for them to be doing it. Oh, they're training, but they're not bending water while they're doing it. They're just doing things. It
Why
was
don't
so
you ever
bizarre.
just stand next to me and wave your hands around with me, honey?
like-
That's totally a thing you do.
They weren't trying to.
And
They
didn't
weren't.
it just like cut from that to nothing? Like it was just a completely pointless thing with no backup or explanation or anything, and then like it changed.
Yeah, exactly. There wasn't lead up to it. There wasn't like, okay, before you learn to master the actual art of water bending, you must learn the steps of the bending first, or something like that, which would have made sense. Like, okay, you can't bend water until you can move in such a way that would allow you to bend water.
Well,
But you just see them standing around doing some stupid arm waving stuff.
Whatever
For
happened
no
to that
reason.
one scene where like they find this really important scroll, and it's like, my mom spoke of this, and then they don't use it. They don't touch on
Yeah,
it
like-
ever again.
They don't.
Show.
Yeah, so there is a
Like-
scroll in the show, but that's what they use to perfect their water bending
Yeah,
before they actually get up to the North Pole.
Get it, and then that's it. They have it now. I guess.
It's the reason why Katara is a stronger waterbender than Aang in the show, because she learns from this, and like I said before, Aang's undisciplined, so he doesn't have any so he learns stuff really
she pulls
quickly.
a Hermione.
Yes, she learned it very quickly. He learned it very quickly, but he's like, I don't freaking care. He wants to just be a kid. But Katara wants to be a waterbender. That's like her reason for going on this quest. And she becomes really skilled and disciplined and learns these skills and she becomes something of a waterbending master by the time that she's done with her time in the North Pole. She just throttles every other person. We don't know how much time has passed, but in the first episode, Katara has to work really hard. First episode in the North Pole, she has to work really hard to prove that she's worthy of being taught by Paku. And then in the start of the next episode, she's advanced so quickly that every one of his students is like getting trounced by him, because she's a naturally skilled person who's dedicated and works hard.
Ambition.
Yes, she has a desire to be a good waterbender. Which Aang doesn't have, which is why he struggles with it.
And then backtracking slightly to like the scroll being brought up and them just practicing stuff but nothing really explained. There's so many points in this movie where it seems like they rely on the audience having previous knowledge of the whole series, but then so many other points where they're trying to just state so deeply and for so long exposition about obvious seeming stuff
yes.
that like and it's so inconsistent and weird with how they do it, and it's like they're talking to a child about like, this is how you add like 1 + 2, but then like multiplication, they're just like, what? Why don't you know how it works?
Yeah.
Like,
God, that is such a good point. And it gives you whiplash.
In this movie is just so like, okay, for a movie that like it makes it, let me be clear on this. The movie is way too short. They either need to make this more than one movie for the first book, or they needed to make this movie longer.
Yeah, like 2 hours.
The movie is literally an hour and a half with a little bit of change.
And like it was stated earlier, it's for kids, but also, I guess, I mean, a lot of young adults and teens and kids alike all really like this show, and I think it would have been fine if it was longer.
Yeah. People with shorter attention spans, little kids probably, like, this show isn't for little kids. It's for kids who have a little bit of an attention span.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I mean, kids sit through the Avengers just fine, and it's like 3 hours, right?
Those are superhero movies, you know?
They could have made this movie longer. It's an hour and a half. It's way too short. And that would be...
Four episodes of Avatar.
But let me be clear on this. Like, okay, Star Wars, or A New Hope as it's known nowadays, because there's so many other Star Wars movies, it's 2 hours, just barely over 2 hours. And yet you know exactly what's going on. Like, there's never any question about what's going on screen.
It's not
in this. They go through so many things so quickly, and then they spend an inordinate amount of time talking about stuff that doesn't need to be discussed.
And like stuff that's never discussed in the show, like about Aang's tattoo. That's never like really delved in upon, but he like makes a point, and it's like a 2.5 minute to 3 minute point about like, we get these tattoos and meditate for hours, and some monks can meditate for 4 days, and he just like walks away.
Yeah, like, okay, what? Why did we feel the need to say this? And they spent so much time doing this stupid exposition stuff. Like, this is a really key point to talk about, to compare it with the show. Whenever they talk about stuff like, oh, this is what the Avatar is, something you guys mentioned is, okay, well, they talk about the Avatar and what he is during the intro, which is, it's only talking to you, the audience. But they don't talk about that stuff with Aang. People, you're in a world where you everybody in the world knows who the Avatar is. So they don't need to talk about, oh, well, are you the Avatar, the master of the 4 elements? They just say, did you know the Avatar? And she's like, no, I didn't know him. I knew people who knew him, but I didn't know him. That's something that Aang actually says. Like, it's just like, people, it's understood what the Avatar is and who he is. They might mention, like, okay, oh, that's Avatar Roku. He was the guy who came before me, because not Sokka and Katara might not know who Avatar Roku was. But they don't ever assume that you don't know, that the characters in the room don't know anything when they probably would know something.
Mhm.
The exposition is just so terrible because it's so heavy-handed and it's unnecessary. There's a scene you guys mentioned already, but since we're talking about exposition, I'm going to bring it up again.
Do it. Do it.
Katara and Sokka already know about the Avatar, and yet their grandmother sits them down. Gather round, children, and listen.
Oh,
We're going to talk
friggin'.
about who the Avatar is and what his importance to the world is. And then they go to the Southern Air Temple, and they're like, "So the Avatar, so you're the Avatar. You're the last Airbender. The Airbenders went extinct or something." So they just talk about stuff as if they already knew the Airbenders went extinct, but their grandmother talks to them as though, "So did you know that the Avatar went extinct? I mean, that the Airbenders went extinct, and this young man is very likely to be the Avatar." Like, okay, so what you're saying is that this is confirming the suspicions we already had, and then telling us something we already knew.
Oh, God. You know, and it's so easy to be like, oh, I could do a movie better than this person. It's easy to fall into that. And like, oh, it takes a lot of planning and years of school and da 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 da. But honestly, he phoned it in. Like, y'all can't convince me otherwise. He freaking...
Well, the problem is there were so many things. Why did they feel the need to go through so much stuff in an hour and a half? Like, the entire siege of the North Pole takes an hour of screen time.
I think the reason they did is because they fell on the fallacy that ending a trilogy movie with a big battle like Lord of the Rings is how you get butts in the seats. Like, I felt like they fell into that, you know, if we do this and we tie it up neatly in a bow, people want to know the aftermath, and we'll have this huge, great, amazing cinematography, and they'll love it and they'll come back. But with Avatar, it has so much heart and soul to it. You can't just do that. And build up. I wasn't worried for any of these characters during the war, not because I knew that protagonists don't die, you know, usually in kids shows, which isn't true in Avatar. But anyway, I had no attachment to these people. There were
like, please, dear God, get rid of that.
Yes, there were no endearing moments. The closest we got to any form of endearment was him talking with that guy that betrayed him. That was the only like sweet little moment of, I've been here this whole time, and you know, we remember you still. That was the only really little nugget of chemistry with this random guy.
A stupid dumb scene.
And it was ruined because he betrayed him.
So you'll forgive me, right? You'll forgive everyone, right? As an aside, like, can I just point out that it's so stupid that that this dumb dragon spirit that appears nowhere in the TV show says, "So you're the Avatar, and that means you can't kill people, okay?" When previous avatars killed the F out of people. They kill people all the time. It's not the reason Aang doesn't kill people isn't because he's an avatar. It's because he's an airbender.
Yeah.
It's like it completely ignores the reason for why he's a pacifist. It's instead of just saying, "Oh, the Avatar is supposed to not kill people."
No, that's not a thing. That's not a thing at all. And then, like, even though they say that, they completely disregard it for the entire rest of the movie. Also,
I'm pretty sure he kills a bunch of people.
Oh yeah. Going back to that people fall on like, oh well, I could make it better, but like, you know, a lot I could do it better, and it's like, that's not true at all. But like, there's a reason this movie has a 5% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
You know, I think we've been too hard on Avatar. You know why? I think that the ultimate goal of uniting everyone was achieved. We all agreed, multiple races, multiple ages, that this movie sucked. So
Oh my
maybe
God.
this is the
It
twist
worked.
ending that M. Night Shyamalan wanted. He wanted to unite us. Sorry, my hair is turning into the alien guys right now. But maybe.
Do we need to have a mass replaying of this movie everywhere in the world right now? Maybe it would really help out.
Remember when this happened?
Dude, like for the 90 minutes thing, it's like Shyamalan was like, basically the excuse was like, well, all of his other movies are 90 minutes, and they were like thrillers, so that must he just he was just leaning on his previous experience and like
The shortest movies and shortest genres among books and shows
Yep.
and movies.
And
Like
he just did what he knew, and he's like, yep, 90 minutes, that's how it goes. People won't want to watch more than that.
But here's like a key problem. So I understand. Okay, so most movies need to follow tend to follow, almost all movies actually follow like a very, very simple 3-act structure, which is like the beginning, which is a lot of background and like, here's the thing that kicks off the action. The middle, which is a bunch of stuff filling it in. The end of Act 2 is usually the character's lowest point, and then Act 3, there's a new conflict established and a climax, after which there's just kind of a slow decline in the level of action. Maybe they have like a cliffhanger ending or something. Almost all movies follow that structure.
it works.
It works. It's not like people intentionally go into a movie to make it 3 acts, but it's what inevitably happens with most
Basic writing skills, like in elementary school ending.
Mhm.
Yeah, they
Right.
teach that for a reason.
And then there's like and then there's people out there who will say, well, so and so doesn't do that. So like Quentin Tarantino doesn't do that. He doesn't do that in the most obvious way because his movies are oftentimes non-linear, but they do have a first, second, and third act. They're just cut up, so it doesn't technically follow a linear progression because the movie is viewed out of order. So yeah, they actually do have a traditional 3-act structure. It's just spliced differently.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Which is cool for some movies.
yeah, and it's fine. But almost all movies follow this structure, even if you don't realize it. This movie, I have no idea what was going on. I have no idea. Like, okay, so I think 90% of it was like seriously, about 50% of the movie was Act 3. And like 20% of it was Act 2, and like 30% of it was Act 1. I was so confused about where we were in the movie. Like, okay, so what's the inciting incident? Is it Zuko? Okay, then why doesn't he play a bigger role in the movie? Okay, what's the common thread that links all this stuff? What is this story really about? Okay, because if you're going to have a movie about, if you're gonna have a movie and you're going to start linking all of this stuff together, there has to be something like consistent about it that makes us understand, that we keep going back to. I think the thing that they kind of like fell back on during this movie is like, okay, so the central theme is Aang learning to come to grips with the fact that his family died, which is something that is not touched on at any point except for when he learns that he's the last airbender, and at the end of the movie when he enters the Avatar state. There's nothing else in the entire movie that touches on what I think is the movie wants to be its central, cohesive message.
The message is don't watch this movie ever
Yeah.
again. That's what I received loud and clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just when it comes to the themes of this movie, I don't know what they are. I don't know what the movie was trying to say, except to just be a movie that was supposed to make a lot of money because it's a movie based on a popular kids show.
Teeth, you know what I think? Maybe it was just, what happened?
What?
Maybe they just kind of forgot what they were trying to say.
I think that is what happened.
Oh, maybe.
Sometimes people just forget things. Maybe they want to
Most of the
subvert our
cast-
expectations.
Most of the cast were just like, Wait, we're working on Avatar: The Last Airbender? Oh, I thought we
Oh,
were working on the other
I
Avatar.
thought this was Game of Thrones season 8.
Oh God, don't.
subverted.
You know what really disappointed me though? Like there was obviously some real talent, like the costumes,
Oh
some of the
my gosh.
buildings, the
Oh,
atmosphere.
yeah.
Like you could tell some people worked really, really hard, but it fell on a bad story and bad lead actors with the most screen time.
And you go
Oh.
ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's heartbreaking to see that disconnect of people actually really cared, and it already had a loving audience waiting to embrace it. And even then, a director can get too high of themselves, thinking, I don't even have to try, and people will notice. You can't pull one over on people who love the show for what it is. You can't.
I think also something that's worth noting is like the camera, the colors. So I mentioned color a lot. I mean, at the end of our last discussion on the movie, when we were talking about the TV show, that is. So it's like really bright. The color is like really desaturated, and there pretty much is no color. In fact, you would not know that the Water Nation was people from the Water Nation unless you saw the fact that, except for what outfits they're wearing. They could just be like, people who live in the wilderness, like, the Thens in Game of Thrones.
Like, I get that maybe they were trying to make it like, oh, it's just realistic to real life.
But I don't want that. If I wanted that, I would watch Game of Thrones or
Well,
something else like it.
It's not consistent. It's not consistent through the whole movie. And so it really throws it off.
Also, something that's
And
really
it is.
Yeah, go.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say it pushes a mood for the tone of the movie that is not how the tone of the show is. That bright colorfulness.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was gonna touch on too. Like, for something that was marketed as a kids movie, for something that actually for once had age-appropriate actors as children, I didn't feel like I watched a kids' movie. There was no joy, there was no laughter, there was no childishness.
Humor was
being constipated.
so it was non-existent.
Yes,
No,
I didn't feel like
the
I watched a
facial
kids' movie.
expressions, The three main actors never had any facial expressions except for neutral or like
Confused.
confusion. Yeah, that kind of like. I feel like Sokka's actor always looked confused and like angrily confused. Just didn't know what was going on. And I think that's just that person, because like Jasper is a lot like that. But for Jasper, it makes sense. For Sokka, it doesn't.
Sokka's the smartest person in the group in the show.
And so animated, has so much personality, and it wasn't there. And
Also,
I know the
his
series is
ponytail
animated.
was so well groomed. That man had not
It
been
was-
in the wilderness. It was straightened. It was shiny. Frick off.
Where was my boy Zuko's top knot?
No,
It
right?
is.
And
Why did they not? Why could they not do that? Was it not allowed?
And I understand that like the series is animated, but you can have that animation of like physical animation with acting. That's totally possible in the eyes and eyebrows with like a jerk back or like lean forward, like just little things like that add so much, and they just stood there the entire time.
Guys, I
and
have
just
to warn
stared.
you. We're being asked to watch the Dragon Ball movie.
Oh, no.
Please don't.
Oh no!
Please don't.
Oh god!
Please,
we
we've-
have to.
No,
We
we've
got
already been hurt so
I haven't
much.
seen. Okay, I have a defense of this. I have not watched like even a single episode of Dragon Ball. So
I've only watched like one, and it was with my dad Matt when I was like 4. I just remember a giant
Wait,
person.
All
I missed
right,
that.
listen up.
Chocolate eating them. What?
I watched it. Me and my brothers every day after school. We would
Wait.
we would watch Dragon Ball. We would be very into it, even though we would have to wait so many episodes for anything to freaking
Oh
happen.
hell yeah!
Yeah! And then when Frieza came up, we were, oh god, that arc.
final form,
Yeah! But listen, I don't want to go through that. I can't. After Avatar, I can't.
Maybe I should watch Dragon Ball while I'm waiting for
Watch Z.
the world end.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's like the abridged version, right? It just
Yeah,
cuts to the chase with everything.
Dragon Ball Z was kind of like it was a bit more abridged than the original Dragon Ball, but it like kind of was enhanced as well. Because the OG Dragon Ball anime came out like in the 90s or 80s.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah, I
He came out like in the
animation.
2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, I thought. But like Z was the one that like
That was
my
on
generation
Toonami,
grew up
yeah.
on. Yeah, it was like a
Yeah.
Toonami, and that's like the one that you think of whenever you think of Dragon Ball for the most part.
saw Dragon Ball Z.
I just
The weird thing is,
remember my ex trying to get me to read the manga, and I saw Little Boy Dongle, and I was like, nope.
There was a little
oh
child.
yeah,
There was a tiny little finger.
Because he was a little kid running around.
I know.
the thing is, Dragon Ball Z catches so much shit. It's like, oh, it's so long and nothing happens. Dragon Ball Z is shorter than Bleach, and it is shorter than Naruto. Not Naruto
Yes!
and Naruto Shippuden, just Naruto.
What?
Yeah, because it's
Really?
only 291 episodes.
Original Naruto's longer than that? Oh shit.
I thought so.
Girl.
Let me look it
Well,
up.
then you add Shippuden, and then freaking the
'Cause-
movies, and then
220, my bad. Original Naruto was 220, and then Shippuden was like another 200 episodes.
And One Piece, isn't that still going on?
Oh
Oh,
my
yeah.
god, One Piece is like at 500 episodes and like over 1,000
Like,
chapters.
First arc, technically.
I remember when One Piece first came out.
Oh, thanks,
I
Grandma.
hope they're going
Thanks,
fast.
Mod Fan. I should call you Situ, actually.
No. Anyway, I don't
But
want
yeah.
to suffer. I feel like the next one we would do could maybe potentially be Ghost in the Shell.
Or we could watch a. We
Oh,
could watch
yeah.
So you
like,
can just watch the movie, and you can
we
watch.
could just watch a straight up bad movie.
Yeah.
I got
Um,
a few of those.
Like, okay, I've heard like Ghost in the Shell is disappointing because it's whitewashed, but I've heard it's like, in terms of like the Rotten Tomatoes score, it's not terrible.
Oh.
Like it's like in the 60s, which is like not good, but it's okay.
It's not the
Um,
last Airbender.
No.
It's not the
You
last
can
Airbender.
say that.
I feel like
Um,
I don't mean to be too crass, but I feel like some like found footage awful things probably would have a higher rated on Rotten Tomatoes than freaking this movie. This has to be
Oh,
the
yeah.
lowest rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's
it has
not.
to be.
There are movies out there with 0%.
What?
There's one that just came out, although I don't think that's fair because it has like 20 something reviews.
Anything
But I
with
mean,
0%.
What
there are
is
movies out there with 0%. Like
But those
The Ridiculous Six by Adam Sandler has 0%.
Oh no. You mean
feel
Adam
like that was
Sanders'
somehow-
laundering scheme to just make more money?
I watched Cabin Fever. It was so bad. Girl, we gotta watch it. It's so
Have
bad.
you seen?
Cabin Fever.
Or we watched.
It has 0%
we watched-
tomatoes.
We watched Grown Ups and Grown Ups 2. And Grown Ups, even though I think Grown Ups 2 was actually technically a worse movie, at the very least, it acknowledges. It almost acknowledges. It's almost like them looking at the camera constantly, letting you know, yes, we
It's
know
just
this
them
is a
on
bad
vacation
movie.
with their family, and they get
And
away
the
with it.
first movie is like it tries to have this stupid forced sentimentality thing to it. So even though it's a better movie, I dislike it more because it is not unabashed and it's like
You know,
Grown Ups 2 it's terrible and it knows it's terrible. So at least there's that.
you know what's
Never
heartbreaking?
forget
Barbara has
Jack
a
and
pretty
Jill.
good rating.
Oh God, Jack and Jill. You know what's really heartbreaking? I don't know
What?
if y'all are old enough to remember Chris Farley, or the
Yes.
movies he did or SNL, but like he was among that crew, like with David Spade and Adam Sandler.
Mhm.
The one good thing about this timeline is Chris Farley didn't have to be there, and Paul Blart took his place in Grown Ups. Friggin'
Yeah, it's
Kevin
true.
James is
He
a
took his
stand-in.
yeah, Kevin James, who was not in SNL, took his place. So
Like Chris Farley was so funny.
He
It
was
I
Tommy Boy, Beverly
Yep.
Hills Ninja. Oh,
I forgot he was in that.
but yeah, I mean, there are so many bad movies that I feel like. Okay, so anyway, I feel like we're kind of getting off track. There are a lot of bad movies we could watch. Jack and Jill, I've heard, is like just absolutely unbelievably terrible. It has a budget of almost 80 million, and it which makes you wonder why did Al Pacino cost 78 million
No.
to get in the movie? And if so, I mean, I guess that's fair. He apparently tries the hardest of anybody in it, but
Okay.
anyway. So about Avatar, I feel like we've covered like all the big stuff except for like one really key, really key part, and that is a comparison of the characters. I almost feel like it's not fair because the characters in the movie are so non-existent that it almost doesn't feel like you can compare the characters. But I feel like we've got to do it anyway because we have a dedication, we have a duty to we have a civic duty to uphold.
I don't want to
So-
uphold my civic duty. I want to run. I don't want to.
So, Aang.
Mhm.
So,
You mean
here's-
Ong?
Yes. So, a really big thing about Aang's character is the fact that he straight up doesn't want to be the Avatar in the TV show. Like, he says it multiple times, and it's hinted that the reason that he is imprisoned in the it's not hinted, it's stated explicitly. The reason he's in the iceberg is because he didn't want to be the Avatar and he wanted to run away from his responsibilities. He is a kid after all. But so now, as a consequence of his actions, he has to save instead of being a man who is trained and knows what he's doing. But like in the movie, why does he? What's his central character issue? I mean, honestly, I'm asking. I don't know.
Everyone is dead around him.
He's sad.
He's sad, so sad.
Very confused. Like the last scene in the movie is him like everybody literally bowing before him, and he does this dumb like flip thing, and he like looks out at the crowd like with his hand outstretched, and he looks like he has like this really like he's like, what on earth am I doing and why am I in this movie? He looks so confused, and it's supposed to be this inspirational last scene. I don't know what they were going for because I came away from it feeling baffled.
Like he looks like a new hire at a job where he's like, "Ooh, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have like taken this job, but I'm here now," and then suddenly gets promoted to CEO. It's just like he's escorted around the job. He's like, "This is how you do it. This is what you do," and then he's like, "All right, this is cool," and they're like, "Cool, you're running the company now."
Now you're the boss. Okay, go save the world, Ong. It's so confusing because I honestly have no idea what his character is supposed to be in the movie. I don't know. I don't know what they're going for. A big thing that motivates his character as you go through the show is like it's hinted at like as early as the first scene he's in, but he has a crush on Katara, and it develops into a romance by the end of the show. But in this, there's nothing. There's not even a hint of any kind of romance between them. Nothing.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just so much with all the characters are just gone.
They're like, they're so, they're cardboard cutouts. It's like they have no characterizations. Like if you didn't have the source material, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you had no idea what the original series was, and this is like for every single one of them. Like this is something we'd bring up and we kind of have. but like with each individual characterization, it's like this character has no personality. It is a saltine cracker of entertainment, in the fact that like they don't have any emotion. Their dialogue is so poorly written, and we're supposed to be like really like a good example of this scene is like is when we have like the death scene, right? So we have the princess who has sacrificed her life for the moon spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cared. It didn't even look like Sokka cared.
No,
He just-
they didn't have a romance that was building. They just it's like this. It's like the problem with Attack of the Clones. So we're supposed to care about the romance between Padme and Anakin, right? We know that they're feeling romantic feelings towards each other because they said that they're feeling romantic feelings towards each other. So these people are I have no doubt this is where it would go in the movie, because like they have to get to the point where Aang and Katara are romantically involved. So they have feelings towards each other because they talked a lot. So Katara or should say Sokka and Yue were romantically involved because they talked a lot in the movie. So that is the defense of their romance. See, that's the entire summation of it.
You heard it here first, chat. Me and Teeth talk quite a lot, so there must be romance there.
Yeah, that's true.
Stay away from my man,
Yes.
you hussy, I swear to God.
You have to talk more. You have to talk more. It doesn't have to be.
Sorry,
It doesn't
I
have to
don't
be
give you what
substantive.
Gil gives you. I'm sorry.
It doesn't have to be substantive. You just have to say words. And
Why
if
don't you
we're
just
saying
go
them
to
to each other,
Nebraska?
then that means that we care about each other.
You can't talk to him about Game of Thrones like I can.
Oh god, it's okay. Psyche, we'll go and
We'll
we'll
go.
create a world.
Okay.
We'll get a house that's
We will.
clean.
We'll
and,
run off on our own. The house will be nice.
Yeah,
They can
I
be.
get Teeth.
and lots of cats.
They can be in their little man
Ocean-
cave with tinfoil
Ocean,
hats
you're-
on.
All she has to do is just text me grocery lists. That's all she has to do. If she just talks to me a
You a
lot.
grocery list
If
today.
she talks to me a lot,
Can I
then
do
that
that?
means that she cares about me.
And I
If
I mean,
she
you
does-
do that
regard
sometimes.
by that.
He'll never get groceries.
Yes.
I mean, when
So
we're not in a
that-
pandemic,
so
I
That's
got
what.
a lot.
So what that means is mothers talk to their children a lot, so they want to have sex with them. So,
What?
Oedipus had it right.
I know what Oedipus is.
so that's the logic there. This is the logic of
Are we
Avatar: The
done?
Last
Can I
Airbender.
run away now?
Yeah,
Like, and early.
Oh my
no.
gotta go watch more
Scary
Avatar.
ride. I wanna go.
It's as simple as that. So,
Oh my god.
when it comes to what's it called? Katara's character, like what's her central motivating factor? Well, she wants to go to the North Pole because she wants to be a waterbender, because she's the only person who can bend water in the South Pole. So she wants to learn how to be a better waterbender. That's the primary reason she wants to go with Aang. It's not because she's attracted to him or because she wants to protect him, although there's some of that, like she wants to keep him safe. But at the same time, it's mostly because she wants to be a better waterbender. But she saves Aang because she's compassionate, because she has care for human beings as a whole who are hurting. Sokka's like, don't do that. He could be a Fire Nation spy. But like that's kind of hinted at in the movie. Like, oh, don't. He could be some Fire Nation douchebag. Don't help him out. But that's the end of that. From after that point, Sokka's just like completely all on board with being Team Avatar. So
I like what was pointed out in chat that like their relationship started when they saw it. It was like love at first sight, and it's like yeah, and we only know this because Katara like narrates it at us. Like everything else in the movie, we're told, this is what's happening. This is how we feel. It was like somebody gave us the cliff notes and they're just reading them while we're watching the film.
So yeah, in the movie, their relationship isn't like super well developed because they've only known each other for a couple of weeks by the end of it. But they it's established they spent some time together, so they kind of have a feeling for who they are as people. But it's pretty well hinted that the initial thing that brought them together is just attraction. It's not love or anything. It's just two kids who are attracted to one another. They're two teenage people. What are they? Teenagers, I guess is what you call them. So, is that what you call people who are in their teenage years? I don't know. I haven't talked to a person, and I haven't talked to a person in three decades.
I have to, and like when it comes to romances in Avatar, like, yes, Sokka and the Moon have a great little love story, but ultimately, and okay, don't listen if you don't want spoilers. Don't listen for like
spoilers ahead.
30 seconds. Starting now. Don't listen. I feel like Katara and Aang's relationship is so much more beautiful because you see them grow up and be friends and be humorous towards each other, not just the whole smolder one night freaking romance novels you get for 10 dimes.
Yeah.
Or 10 cents, which is a dime. I don't know.
10 dimes is $1.
Yeah, for $1. Okay, 30 seconds is over.
Also,
but...
wait.
No, okay, don't listen if you're listening. Okay, go.
But also, okay, and like I totally ship Zuko and Katara because
I heard a lot of people did.
Yeah,
that's your type of ship.
But even them, like, they also grow as people together, and there's like chemistry of friendship.
Like Draco and Hermione also.
I didn't never really like Harry Potter.
She's not a big Harry Potter person.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So I probably would have.
Who else did you ship that were like villains and the main female?
I also read for Draco's dad.
No.
I also like Slade from Teen Titans and Lord Harkin from Skyrim. Yeah, anyways, we can keep going.
Anyway, so the big thing is that like the reason why Katara wants to go is for somewhat selfish reasons, and also partly because she's a compassionate person who doesn't want to see a young boy who is completely oblivious to what's going on in the world get left completely by himself and get stranded in the middle of nowhere. And Katara cares about his sister, so he goes with her as well. Although he has, at the beginning, he's got like kind of mixed feelings about Aang. By the end of the first season, though, there's no question as to his loyalty, though. But what Katara Sokka in the show, he's comic relief, but he's also shown to be by far the most intelligent member of the group. Frequently shown to be the most intelligent member of the group. And even though he's not a bender, he's not a burden to the other characters. There's a really good episode. I kind of hinted at it. It's like where they introduce the character Jet, who's a vigilante. He beats up the Fire Nation. He's cool and whatever. And Sokka immediately gets a bad vibe from him. And everybody else is really trusting of him.
The two trusting characters, notably trusting.
But Sokka does not trust things at face value. He looks deeper and is immediately skeptical of whatever he sees. That's one of the reasons he didn't trust Aang. He immediately didn't trust him because everything in his life, because he has to be a protective person. He's the only person who has any martial prowess in the entire southern water tribe. So he has to be, a distrusting protector of the people because there's nobody else to do it. So he got where he is out of necessity. So he doesn't trust Jed because he sees what's going on beneath the surface to some extent, and Katara and Aang make him feel like he's an idiot for doing it. But then it turns out he's right. Jet wasn't even really doing anything to hurt the Fire Nation. He was willing to kill an entire village of innocent.
It was an Earth village too.
Kingdom,
Let's
yeah.
even...
Just so that he could wipe out a few Fire Nation flunkies.
Mm-hmm. Who were just doing their job, probably, like the lowest of the low. Which still, their job was bad, but
my phone it's doing it.
oh, it's doing it again.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
What Jet started beating up this old dude who happens to be a Fire Nation, who happens to be from the Fire Nation, and Jet's like, oh, he's got poison on him. He was trying to kill everybody in the village, and Sokka's like, no, he wasn't. You for all I know, you planted that on him, and you were the one who was trying to poison a bunch of people. And Sokka's right. He did literally plant this. He said he took it from this old man, and then he just presented evidence that wasn't there before. And I don't remember exactly what happens, but Sokka saving that old man was a really important part of how he managed to save the entire village of people, because that old man was not. Because that old man, as it turns out, was just an innocent old man. He didn't have any ulterior motives. He's a person from the Fire Nation, but he doesn't adhere to their ideology. There's
Just
good people. There are good people in the Fire Nation, even though the Fire Nation was an antagonist of sorts. So my point in saying all this is that Sokka trusted his instincts about people, which are usually right and good, and it ended up being a really good character moment for him. He gets to tell Jet that Jet is not that Jet became the villain the second he started to intentionally use people to accomplish his goals, sometimes even at the cost of those people's lives. So Sokka has a good character moment. There's other moments throughout this first season where he's like shown to be a lot smarter than people give him credit for. In fact, somebody else on screen, and he has a character, a pretty well-defined character, even though he's a comic relief guy. Mostly because he might be smart, but that doesn't mean he's not like clumsy and clueless most of the time. So what about in the movie?
They did Sokka wrong.
He's a vampire.
Yeah.
I'm just...
Yeah.
And the older I've gotten, the more I've appreciated his role in the show. To, like, a lot of people say that among the core group of the Avatar's friends, there was fire, there was earth, there was water, there was air. But there was Sokka. That was that element that's not spoken of, just being a person without any powers but your own. And he really did contribute a lot to them. He grounded them. He kept them in reality. He did protect them at times. And in the show, it was just... If I had not known the title of the movie, and I had just seen a few seconds from it, I couldn't have told you that was him. I, honest to goodness, could not have told you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like I said during the movie. It's like this movie, if you didn't know what it was supposed to be, it would play out like a young adult novel, like a Divergent.
Mm-hmm.
It looked more like that than it did a movie that was supposed to be an adaptation of Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so, like, when it comes to his character, I honestly, there's no difference between him and Katara, because they don't do anything on screen other than like, oh, here's the difference between Katara and Sokka. Sokka gets a girlfriend, and Katara doesn't get a boyfriend. That's the difference. That's the entire difference between their character. because otherwise they don't do anything else in the movie except just follow Aang around. They literally don't do anything else. Neither of them. Oh, and Katara narrates.
No, so
That's her primary function.
that's her only function in this movie.
I almost feel like we're running out of time to talk about this because the movie was so short. Like, I almost feel like
It's just like
we've
we
been
just
talking about this
repeat
longer
all
than the
the
actual
things.
movie.
We have. Oh
But
no, that's so sad.
We're talking about this 2 hours and a half, and the movie is 90 minutes long.
That's impressive, honestly.
We are familiar.
We're truly the
things,
masters of content.
Usually we can talk for hours.
That and Night Shyamalan.
But there was so little content in this movie. I feel like we may end early because
We'll just end up continuously ranting forever about this.
Yeah, we're
but
at triple
it's
speed.
just
no.
almost any good long-running TV show is grounded in its characters. That's something that really is important for a TV show because it's the thing that the characters and seeing where they are and where they're going to be next week after the next episode airs is what keeps you coming back. Seeing, okay, well, how are they going to get themselves out of this mess? Or what are they going to do now? Or,
With movies,
but
sorry, continue.
but with so it's harder to do that with a movie because movies are shorter. It's harder to have good character moments. But I want to be clear. I know that just because a movie is not, there's not as much time to develop character moments between characters in a movie doesn't mean that it can't be done. I want, take Star Wars for instance. Like, you going back to Star Wars, I don't know why, but maybe it's because I've recently rewatched it.
Maybe it's because we know Kathleen Kennedy worked on this one too.
Oh my god!
Yeah, we haven't talked about that.
Time is a flat circle. So when it comes to these characters, though, a really key, or I should say, when it comes to the characters in Star Wars, you know very early on what Luke is, who he is, what his motivation is. He wants to leave Tatooine. He doesn't want to be stuck here forever. He wants to leave where he's from, and then he learns what his father is, and he wants to be like his father. That's one of his character motivations. For Han Solo. Han at the beginning of the movie doesn't care about anybody. He's a rogue and he wants to stay that way. He has a vested interest in trying to keep the others alive because he wants to be paid. But then he has a really important moment that happens later on when he says to Luke, "May the Force be with you." And you think it's kind of like a, half-hearted, whatever, I'll see you later, buddy, kid, whatever. And then during the attack on the Death Star, Han's the one that bails Luke out when Darth Vader's on his tail. So it actually wound up amounting to something. Han has second guesses about just being a loner and not caring about anything because he's developed a relationship with Luke over the course of this movie. Even though, let me be clear, Star Wars is literally a hair over 2 hours long, and yet I know exactly what all these characters want and what their goals are. This movie is 30 minutes shorter, sure, but you can still have that stuff in it. And yet I don't think they made any efforts at all to make it clear what the characters were, to develop relationships between them, like in Lord of the Rings, for instance. You see there's little scenes that don't happen in the books, to help us see a development of character, like Boromir just kind of goofing around with the hobbits, so that when he succumbs to the ring, it feels it's harder to watch because you've actually kind of started to like Boromir a lot, and you understand why he would fall to the ring. It's not like he's a bad person.
But yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Swampy.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, I know they plan to have more movies, so the first movie would have been great to set up those relationships, but it felt like they were trying to take it from 0 to 10 instantly in the first movie with like nothing there. Like they're strangers, and then suddenly they like,
I would die for you.
oh, yeah, but like out of
Yeah.
nowhere and like not displayed correctly, and it's just really weird. And they could have made some really good strides to set up that base connection that would then get closer over the next 2 movies that will never happen.
Yeah, like, you know, if you think about there's three seasons of the show, and the 3 seasons, you know, they're kind of like a 3-arc movie. So the first bit is like, okay, so here's the inciting incident. He learns how to become a waterbender, and then the second act of a movie is usually the darkest. So book 2, Earth, is probably the darkest out of all of them. It ends with, like, I think, you know, Aang almost dying, and he is unconscious at the end of it. Spoilers, sorry, but you knew what you were getting yourself into when you signed up for a rant about Avatar. And you know, also the group basically lost in their big battle with whatever. But like you were saying, Swampy, they should have just focused on developing the characters and developing the relationships between them. Instead, they focused on just getting get to the North Pole as quickly as possible because we want to have a big action scene at the end.
I don't know what else I can say about this. I honestly, I feel sad and frustrated, but there is a hope that Netflix has bought the rights to make a live action show, not a movie. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, it's live action show, but I think they could do. I think it'll be okay because the original writers are on it. So
Yeah, the original
That-
writers are
no.
involved. Also, I don't think it can get worse.
No, certainly can't.
You know, the bar is so low.
That
you can just step
walk
over it. Yeah,
Yeah.
just walk over it. I love it, Sophie. We both have the same
Yeah.
idea. You know,
Just
the bar
finish
is
each
so
other's-
low. Sandwiches.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we're at the end. Unless there are any closing statements.
Oh, you already know my closing statement.
Yeah, freaking Gil has something to share with stream. I don't know what it is, and I'm scared. Teeth, is there anything else you would like to say about this dumpster fire of a movie?
What I'd like
Oh,
comes to close.
there you go. You cut out a little, but you're good now.
When it comes to like the whole movie, I think that they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. But it's been established before that you don't have to have a big, stupid, dumb action scene in the movie, a huge action scene to close it out for a movie to be successful. Like, I know that, like, The Two Towers has the Battle of Helm's Deep, but the first movie, I mean, like, there is an action scene at the end of it, but it's not overwrought. It's mostly it's just acting. There's very little, if any, CGI. There's that famous bit where, like, the Uruk-hai throws a knife at Aragorn, and he actually deflects it with his sword because it was coming right for his face. So like all that stuff is like actually acted and real, and there's very little unnecessary CGI or anything going on, and it's not a huge big dumb action scene. But this movie has like a huge big dumb action scene, like with a quarter of the movie left, and it's not even exciting because there's like it's mostly just martial, like people punching and kicking at each other. There's no water bending or fire bending or anything. The action scene was so stupid. But there was one bit I think we all laughed at, where like after they literally, a bunch of no-name characters come up to Admiral Zhao and execute him.
Yeah.
They literally
God,
drown
those
a
poor
man on
people.
screen.
Yeah, that's right. There was the drowning man.
And they were not characters that had names.
God.
It's like a bunch of no-name characters walk up to and drown a man to death, and then walk away.
That's how you do it.
Immediately after that, we see Aang like slide halfway across a platform and then just start doing some stupid martial arts crap. There was like the tone of those two scenes was so hilariously discombobulating that I don't think any of us could help but just start bursting out laughing.
Mhm.
It was hilarious.
Are you at peace now?
No. What I'd like to say, my last thoughts on this, is that it's soulless, and it does not in any way attempt to capture what makes Avatar great. It's like he didn't understand why people watched Avatar. It's like Lucas and the prequels. He didn't seem to understand what makes people want to watch Star Wars, even though he created Star Wars. So you'd think he would understand. So he's like, oh, if there's just a bunch of dumb action scenes and lightsabers, people will love it. But they didn't. If there's a bunch of dumb action scenes and martial arts, I guess they'll love Avatar. But we hated it. It was so bad. It was terrible from start. There was not a single part of it that I actually enjoyed watching.
Swampy, Gil, any closing thoughts?
Can't wait to watch the series after this and continue binging it.
Yeah, no, it was just bad. There,
Yeah, it was
there
real
you
bad.
go. It bad. We move along.
If bad, it's
Frick you, M. Night Shyamalan. There we go.
Yep.
Screw you.
All right. And y'all have heard me rant quite a bit. So we have something special to play, apparently. Gil, can you tell them? Don't tell them what it is, but...
It's a song
Uh-huh.
that I did some work on. There you go.
Oh, okay. Gil has posted in our Discord chat a song. I've been told there's no copyright issues, apparently.
No, it is a non-copyrighted song.
Okay, and I'm gonna press play, and I am trusting as a member of my staff, this isn't bad. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and click it. Oh. What is this?
I'm gonna unmute stream so I can.
What is this?
Shh, you'll see. It's 4 minutes of pure joy.
I am so scared. What is this?
Oh, Night Owl helped out, by the way.
Oh no! What? Oh fuck! Ah!
Oh, there's more!
I am so scared.
A drop though, right?
Feeling nasty, okay?
Oh, fuck! Oh my god,
It's so good for a drop, though. It's so perfect. Personally, my favorite part is coming up at the end.
I'm so scared. Oh my freaking crap! What have you guys
Oh
done?
my gosh, the last band is amazing.
The laughing.
No!
That's hilarious.
What have you guys done? What have you freaking...
Wow, that's amazing.
So, if anyone in chat right now gets any clips of Psyche, like very succinct clips from a stream, it can be from anyone's stream, send them my way.
I can't believe you've done this. What if I make this the new intro song? What if this is... What if this is it? What if this is it?
Whatever happened to the old intro song?
Oh, I just I forgot about it. The one I made?
Even though it's not copyrighted and you made
Yeah,
it
I
yourself.
made it. Oh, I forgot about it.
Oh, there was an intro song.
Yeah, it's kind of too calm for
I just
stream
thought you were
now.
playing like lo-fi all the time.
No, I actually made one. It's one of our top clips, actually. Maybe I'll make that the ending song and have this the beginning one.
There you go. That's how you gotta do it. People gotta
Anyone
talk
wants to
down
see?
the stream.
I'm certain I can find the clip real quick. It's one of our top ones. Hold on.
Do you care if I put it in the main
Do
Discord
it,
and not just
do
our
it.
chat? Okay.
Share it. I don't even. Our
What's
life's
this
a
even?
meme at this
Media?
point.
Yeah, this is media.
What is life? God,
Baby,
this
don't
new
hurt
layout.
me.
Where are the clips? What the
Oh,
frick?
Mm.
Where are clips? I don't know anything. Pi says, please, Gil. Pi, don't you do this to me.
Yes.
Don't you do this to me. Pi knows me in
Yes.
real life, you little gremlin. Well,
Oh yeah,
since
it's
I-
in clips.
Oh yeah, there we go. So this is the little intro song we have that I'll just it's not the whole thing, but it's one I made a long time ago. Anyway, great talk, y'all. Great time. I know what song to use to play us out now.
Absolutely.
I'll chat with y'all later. Thank you so much for whatever this is. Happy ranting. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, guys. Enjoy the new ending song.
We about to turn it on. We about to turn it on. We about about to turn it on, 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 about to turn it on,
Oh, fuck!
about to turn it on. About to turn it on. About to turn it on.
Cause I'm feeling nasty, okay?
We about to turn it on. Turn it. We about to turn it on. Turn it. We about to turn it on. 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 About to turn it on.
Oh, fuck!
Psyche. Also, Psyche, you're supposed to go message me, first off. Secondly, thank you for the raid. Holy shit, y'all. Scythe, what's up? Just Marie the Flower, what's up? A little oddling, hello. Awesome Dono,